Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Mayor of the City of Clarence, Councillor Brendan Longley.
Well, before proceeding, I pay my respects to the Women people as the traditional and original custodians of the lands on which we meet, and I acknowledge the continuing connection of the Tasmanian Aboriginal people to the skies, land and waterways. I pay respect to elders past and present. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. So I welcome you all to the annual general meeting of Clarence City Council for 2024, and I extend a very warm welcome to you all. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, and what is said in this meeting is not protected by privilege. There is a link to the agenda papers on the Council's website. I'd like to start the meeting by introducing the councillors. To my left, Councillor Ritchie, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Tony Moulder, Councillor Bree Hunter, Councillor Daniel Hume, Councillor Richard James, Councillor James Walker, Councillor Emma Goyne, Councillor Jade Darko, Councillor Beth Warren, Councillor Heather Chong and Councillor Wendy Kennedy. So there are no apologies from councillors. For item number 5 on the agenda, meeting procedures, procedural information has been included in the agenda, and that's, as I say, available on the Council's website as well. Moving to item number 6, which is confirmation of the minutes of the 2023 Annual General Meeting. The recommendation is that the minutes of the 2023 Annual General Meeting as circulated be taken as read and confirmed. I'll call for a mover. Councillor James, thank you. Seconded Councillor Goyne as seconder. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, colleagues. I now move on to item number 7, which is the annual report for 2023-24. And on behalf of Clarence City Council, I am proud to reflect on the achievements over the past year as we present our 2023-24 annual report. This year has been one of significant growth and collaboration, a testament to the power of working with our residents, local businesses, industry and all levels of government. Together we bring to life a shared vision of Clarence as a prosperous, sustainable and thriving city. Our municipality continues to grow in population and economic strength with a gross regional product of $3 billion and a growth rate outpacing Greater Hobart and Tasmania. While this is a testament to our city's appeal, it also highlights our responsibility to meet our community's evolving needs. In the past year, we have invested in many key areas that make Clarence a wonderful place to live, work and play. From environmental initiatives and cultural programs to essential services and infrastructure upgrades, we remain committed to improving the quality of life for all residents in our municipality. Collaboration has been central to everything we've done over the past 12 months. Conducting a record 34 community consultations, we have ensured the community's voice has shaped critical decisions. A perfect example was the progress on expanding the Derwent River Ferry service to Lindisfarne, a game-changing transport solution for our growing population. Our partnerships with state and federal governments have also been instrumental, enabling us to advocate for projects like the upgrades to the Derwent Ferry Terminal and stormwater improvements. We've also celebrated milestones that strengthen our community. The upgrades of the Alma Street Childcare Centre expanded access for families, while the opening of new parks in Tranmere, South Arm and Cambridge created vibrant spaces for community connection. Our award-winning Takara Lumina walking path was another highlight, a beautiful and educational addition to the Bedlam Walls headland. This year, Clarence came alive with many arts and cultural events, from the Clarence Jazz Festival to the Richmond Bicentenary celebration. These events unite our community and celebrate the creativity and diversity that make the Eastern Shore such a unique and special place. Looking ahead, we've commenced the early processes to plan upgrades to the council chambers as part of our City Harp Plan to ensure our civic building meets the needs of our growing city for generations to come. As I'm sure we can all agree, none of this work would be possible without the passion and dedication of our council staff and elected representatives, supported by professional consultants and advisors. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our CEO, Ian Nelson, and his hard-working and passionate staff for their dedication in providing such a high level of professional advice and support to council and the City of Clarence. In closing, I would like to thank my fellow councillors for another year of your dedication, of hard work and commitment to our community. I thank you all. And now we move on to the CEO's presentation. Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. It is my privilege to present highlights from our 2023-24 annual report, which reflects the achievements and challenges of the past financial year. This year, we've responded to the community's evolving needs, managing rising costs while minimising the impact on residents, ratepayers and businesses. Clarence continues to hold one of the strongest financial positions of any council in Tasmania. Despite inflationary pressures, we've kept our general rate increase to 6.53%, below the March 2023 Consumer Price Index of 6.9%. Our financial management delivered an underlying surplus of $11 million, with total income exceeding projections at $93.3 million. Responsible debt management by the team has enabled us to deliver critical services while remaining financially stable. This year, we distributed almost $100,000 in community support grants to 19 recipients for projects spanning culture, the environment and biodiversity. Our Quick Response Grant program provided 85 grants totalling $20,000 to support young people and community groups in their pursuits and activities. Our $28.9 million capital works program funded vital projects from stormwater and road upgrades to significant improvements in parks and sports grounds. A few of those highlights include $5.58 million invested in traffic and pedestrian safety upgrades, $1.31 million on the play park in Tranmere, and $2.4 million to upgrade the Alma Street Childcare Centre in Bellerive. We also invested nearly $7.5 million in road resealing and renewal, ensuring safer and more efficient travel across Clarence. The planning landscape in Clarence remains robust, with 690 development permits issued and strategic collaborations underway, including updates to the Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy and the state planning policies. Progress has also been made on key structure plans for the Drury Point and 7 Mile Beach areas, as well as the Richmond Village Master Plan to enhance livability and heritage in our municipality. We've continued to advance projects with long-term value, including the Bayview High School Sporting Precinct and Cambridge Oval Master Plan, and the City Heart Plan and Rosny Park Arts and Culture Precinct. These initiatives and many others will shape Clarence's future and help us to continue to be a thriving and connected community. In closing, I'd also like to thank councillors, council staff and our passionate community members for their contributions in the past year. Your participation in consultations, committees and volunteer efforts is integral to our success. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. I'd now like to call on our Chief Financial Officer, Mrs. Jane Mayoral, to provide a presentation as well. Thank you, Mrs. Mayoral.
Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to present Council's financial statements this evening. Firstly, in accordance with the Local Government Act, the annual accounts were lodged within the 45-day statutory deadline, and Council used the Local Government's Division's financial statement template for the first time this year. The audit was undertaken by Tas Audit Office, and the Assistant Auditor General has issued an unqualified audit report. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the team at Tas Audit for their efforts in relation to this year's engagement and the resulting audit opinion, as well as council officers for once again going well beyond to ensure the annual accounts were completed on time and to a high standard. In relation to the 23-24 financial statement, I would like to highlight a few key areas. Council's positive financial result. The underlying result is a key financial management indicator, which for the 23-24 financial year was $11 million. This measure shows Council's estimated operational result from its own sourced funds. That is, it does not include any capital grants, contribution of capital assets or operating grants that may not have been expended in the year that revenue was received. Delivering an underlying surplus consistent with the long-term financial planning supports the delivery of Council's strategic goals, which allows Council to invest in projects that seek to deliver benefits to the community. It also allows Council to minimise rate shock to the Clarence community. I would also like to draw your attention to the total comprehensive result of Council for 23-24, which was a profit of $416 million. This, of course, is a significant figure. However, it is inclusive of many accounting-related and non-cash items, including a revaluation increase to the value of Council's assets in the amount of $376 million. Such a revaluation increase, while providing for a strong financial result and growth to the value of Council, also indicates an increase to the future replacement cost of Council's infrastructure, along with additional maintenance and renewal expenditure required on an annual basis to maintain the service level of infrastructure. It is therefore essential Council continues to consider and provide long-term asset funding from annual results. Other significant accounting-related but non-cash items included in the profit is contributed capital assets of $25.3 million, an increase to the value of Council's investment in Taswater of $9 million, and an increase to the value of Council's investment in the Copping Refuse Site Joint Authority and an associate of $3.4 million. In the past 5 years, Council has received contributed assets from subdivisions of approximately $84 million. This ongoing growth in the city also places asset renewal burden on infrastructure that must be funded in a reasonable and sustainable manner into the future. However, this can be achieved by ensuring that Council's renewal effort is adequately funded by cash-backed reserves such as the Asset Renewal Reserve, which at 30th June 2024 has grown to $35 million. Taswater. In the financial year, Taswater revalued its water and sewer assets, which resulted in an increase of Council's share in Taswater by $9 million to $180 million. Taswater paid dividends of $2.6 million in the financial year, which is in alignment with Taswater's projections. This included a $442,000 dividend, which Taswater plans to pay each year for 5 years, funding permitting, to replace dividends that were withheld during the height of COVID. The last payment for this special dividend is expected to be in 2025-26. Cash holdings. Cash balances saw a decrease of $11 million from the prior year. The decrease in cash held was largely a result of substantially completing some of the major prior year capital works program, a significant project being the Beach Street Stormwater Project. We had $41 million of capital project funds carried over from 23-24 into the current financial year. Cash and investments at 30th June 2024 were $92 million. We classify $58 million as restricted. This includes cash for grants, staff leave provisions, as well as reserves such as the Asset Renewal Reserve, $35 million, Public Open Space Reserve, $3 million, Car Parking Reserve, $2.6 million, and Loan Funding Renewal Reserve of $2.5 million. The remaining $34 million we classify as unrestricted as the cash supports the working capital. The strong cash balance is a direct result of a long-term financial management strategy first implemented 25 plus years ago. Almost $29 million was expended in cash on the delivery of capital projects in 23-24. This amount was close to double of the prior financial year, which the Infrastructure and Natural Asset Group must be commended for. The Statement of Financial Position records $30 million in capital works in progress, and as projects are completed, the amount will be transferred from the WIP to the relevant asset class. Work in progress has increased from the prior year, demonstrating a strong focus by the Infrastructure and Natural Asset Group on the commencement of many new projects which will provide additional and improved assets for the municipality. Current loans. During 22-23, Council approved additional borrowings of $3 million for the Beach Street Stormwater Project. As this project is yet to be completed, these additional loan funds were not taken up in 23-24, but the loan is expected to commence in May 2025 once the Beach Street project is completed. During 23-24, Council also approved funding for Pass Road of $5.1 million and $1 million to begin a needs analysis and concept plans for a potential new council chambers and civic centre. As neither of these projects made substantial commencement in 23-24, these loan funds were also not taken up during the year. Council did repay over $5 million of prior year borrowings, which was largely related to the $14.8 million loan that Council was awarded as part of the Local Government Loan Program to assist local government with continued infrastructure investment during COVID times. As agreed by Council, it is a plan for this loan to be fully repaid in December 24 prior to the cessation of the interest-free period. I would also like to highlight the following points that may impact Council going forward. Inflation levels remain volatile and continue to have a significant impact on our coming budget. Although a significant amount of capital works was undertaken in 23-24, we still have a capital program of $63 million, which is stretching our current staff due to the difficulty in attracting and retaining staff, mainly in the areas of roads and stormwater. Interest rates continue to remain high, with no decreases in interest rates expected until the new year. Interest rate movement will impact on our decisions on when we consider taking up loans mentioned above. Council needs to ensure that the cycle of asset revaluation occurs within the requirements of the Australian accounting standards. Roads and bridges assets were subject to a full revaluation in 23-24, while stormwater and buildings were indexed. Stormwater assets will be fully revalued in 24-25. And finally, as councillors are aware, the 10-year strategic asset management plan of Council and underlying asset management plans are currently under review. Any changes to the focus of timing of asset renewal or new asset construction may have a material impact on the long-term financial management plan of Council. Both the asset and financial plans will be considered in more detail during our upcoming 25-26 budget process. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayoral. And we now move on to 7D and E. And as no submissions have been received, we moved on to 7F, which is a motion to adopt the annual report. The recommendation is the 2023-24 annual report be adopted. I will call for a mover. Please, Councillor Kennedy, seconded the Deputy Mayor. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against?
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Would there like to be a discussion?
Yes.
All right. Councillor Warren.
Thank you. I apologise, first of all, that I didn't give this my close attention earlier, but I have discovered a number of inaccuracies and omissions in the annual report. And while I know it's too late to do anything about the published one, I'm hoping that these may be taken into account on the online version. The first one, I note that on page 8 there's a reference to Blunston Arena, but I presume that's because that was the name during the 23-24 year. Okay, on page 10, in the Mayor's message, there's a reference to exponential growth. Mathematically, that's not correct. I presume that's just hyperbole, but I think that that's probably misleading, and I would prefer not to see that word used inaccurately.
Councillor Warren, just this is my message.
Yes.
So you're not here to critique my message.
Okay.
It's my message. Okay.
Well, I
We've
would
experienced
also...
significant growth in our city over the past 12 months.
Significant is okay. Exponential is a different thing altogether.
Former maths teachers so be, but that's my choice of words. Okay, thank you.
I'm just highlighting the difference. Okay, another comment on that page is that it says a public meeting was held to ensure the community's voices were heard. Now, that's not what happened. This council was dragged kicking and screaming to a public meeting. It wasn't instigated by the council. And I know that's clarified later in the report, and I commend the officers who wrote that section further on, that it was as a result of a community petition that public meeting was held.
Councillor Warren, just
Yes.
a moment. Again, this is my message.
Okay.
So a public meeting was held to ensure communities' voices were heard through the process. That's a matter of fact, and it's my message. Your slant on that's your slant. This is my message, not yours. Okay?
And this is my chance to give my slant, so thank you for that.
Tread very carefully, Councillor Warren.
Certainly. Further on, there's a reference to communities' preference for central locations, this is with regard to the High Performance Centre. Communities' preference for a central location at Rosny Parklands was clear. So I'd like to comment that the result of the elector poll was 51-49, which is not clear. And also there was no non-central location offered. So I don't see how it can be said that the community's preference was clear.
I'll stop you there again. Yeah. You've just actually put the results in the public forum. It's well known. It was clear. There was an elector poll and a majority of people chose the Rosny Parklands. So again, this is my message, Councillor Warren. You can put whatever political slant you want on it, but this is my message.
Thank you for the opportunity to raise these points that have been raised by the community with me. I'll move on and you'll be less concerned about this part. On page 13, where it lists all the councillors and their committees, I note that under my name there are only 2 committees listed, although I was a member of 7. So in addition to the ones listed, I'm also on the Cultural Creative Advisory Committee as a member. I'm also the Southern Tasmanian Waste Management Authority member. I'm a member of the Audit Panel. I'm the chair of the Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group, and I'm also the proxy on the Copping Joint Authority. So I would ask that, with respect, that those be added to this report.
I'll stop you there, Councillor Warren, and just apologise for oversight. That is a point well made. And again, if this had been looked at and notified earlier, we could have taken some action. But thank you, and I apologise.
I do recognise that. And final one, on page 22, right at the bottom, there's a typo. It says they HPC instead of the HPC. So for those reasons, I can't support the report tonight, and I regret that because it's a lovely report. It's got lots of really nice graphics and images and some really useful information, but I do believe that it has to be accurate.
Well, leaving aside the Mayor's message, if we were to amend your the typo and your committee membership with those amendments, would you be comfortable to support the annual report?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Councillor Walker, did you have something you'd wish to say as well?
Thank you. I'll start with some queries, probably through you to...
Just to me, Councillor Walker, thank you. And
to you,
thank you.
Can you talk me through page 56, other expenses? It says councillor-related expenses, 23, so it's in the other expenses bit. And it's 549,000, and then it does this year, and it's 86,000. Now, 86 is probably a number I can get my head around, but one, can you explain to me the 463,000 difference, and whether, you know, because yes, there would have been an overlap of new councillors, old councillors, but I'd really like to understand the big difference.
Thank you.
In those figures.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Please take a seat. Mrs. Mayoral, are you able to address that, please?
Not at the moment. I have to take that one on notice.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Walker. We'll take that one on notice, and we'll come back to you this week.
My next question to you, Mayor, is page 46, repayment of interest-bearing loans and borrowings, and that's listed as 5.505 million. Now, I think Ms. Mayoral might have in some way illuminated around the loans that were prepaid that were about to start bearing interest, but I want some clarification if possible, because it says the term interest-bearing loans. If I could have a understanding of how much of that repayment was interest versus how much was principal. Thank
you, Councillor Walker. Mrs. Mayoral?
Again, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I'd have to take that one on notice.
Okay. Look, I don't ever pretend to be a maths scientist, but looking back at the previous reports, in about 2021, the population was listed at 58,726. In the 21-22 report, that went up by several thousand to be 62,396 as the ABS estimate. So I think at that time there was some understanding that the numbers had been undercounted. But again, I think that was rectified in 21-22. So it goes from 21-22 at 62,396, and in 22-23 it's listed as 63,138. So that's an increase of population of 742. 23-24, the ABS estimates are going from that 63,138 to 63,663. So that's up by 552. Could you confirm with me that that is a decrease in nominal growth and a decrease in the percentage growth of the City of Clarence as far as the rising numbers go?
Mrs. Mayoral.
Sorry, I have to again take that on notice. I didn't put those numbers together, the population numbers.
Okay, but if our population, 742 versus 552 and the base is changing, presumably, can we not agree that that is a decrease in raw numbers from the year before, whilst going up at a slower rate? And surely if the base is now higher, then the percentage increase has got to have slowed as well.
We'll take that on notice and come back to you, Councillor Walker. Thank you.
Okay, well, I've asked questions. I haven't got
any other questions.
So I won't be.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The CFO mentioned in her presentation that there was 41 million of the capital works carryover from the 22-23 year, and then, excuse me, she mentioned that the capital program for 23-24 has 63 million. Of that 63, is there a 41 million carryover that's been incorporated in the 63 million?
Mrs. Mayoral, thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any other questions of the annual report before I put the motion, which is moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by the Deputy Mayor? I note that Councillor Mulder's out of the room, but I will put, or no, we'll just wait for Councillor Mulder to take his seat. So this motion is that the 2023-24 annual report be adopted. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Walker has abstained, and Councillor Warren will take your suggested amendments with those amendments. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, colleagues. Moving now on to item number 8, which is report on activities and achievements of council committees and authorities. Are there any councillors who would like to report on their respective committees? And I'll start this side. Okay, excellent. That was nice and simple. No motions have been received on notice, so there's no questions either. Are there any questions without notice from the public gallery? There being none, there will be a second bite of the cherry shortly with the council meeting. So thank you to those members of the public who attended in person this evening, and those who are joining us via the live stream to attend the Clarence City Council Annual General Meeting for 2024. We will now move into our ordinary council meeting. So, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, may I please invite you all to stand. Before proceeding, I pay my respects to the Mayoral people as the traditional and original custodians of the lands on which we meet, and I acknowledge the continuing connection of the Tasmanian Aboriginal people to the skies, land and waterways. I pay respect to elders past and present as we open this Clarence City Council meeting. And before we commence with tonight's council meeting, please let us all pause for a quiet moment of reflection and respect. Thank you, councillors. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Well, good evening and welcome to the Clarence City Council meeting of Monday, the 2nd December 2024. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, and what is said in this meeting is not protected by privilege, and there is a link to the agenda papers on Council's website. I do note that we have a larger than usual presence in the public gallery this evening, and I extend a very warm welcome to everyone here and also those next door as well in the Mayor's foyer. However, I would like to remind all those in the public gallery that whilst we embrace and encourage a free exchange of views and recognise that this chamber is a place for the contest of ideas, that I ask all those present to respect the views of all speakers and please listen to the debate without interjection or clapping. Our meeting procedures are clear on this, and whilst I appreciate there are passionate views on both sides of the debate that we will have this evening in relation to Councillor Goyne's motion, in fairness to all, I will strictly enforce Council's meeting procedures. To that end, it is my sincere hope that we all play by the rules and enjoying being part of the democratic process. I know Councillor Hume has seeking the call, but we'll just go through the apologies first. I'll call you in a moment, Councillor Hume. But item number 2, apologies. There are none. Item number 3, declarations of interest of councillors or close associates. Are there any declarations of councillors? Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. Planning item 7.1.
Thank you very much.
And similar for myself, item 7.1.
Thank you, Councillor Hunter. I'll move now into the omnibus items. Then I'll call... Actually, Councillor Hume.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a procedural motion that item 9.2 be brought forward to just after item 6, which is the deputations.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this procedural motion? Thank you, Councillor Hunter. As this procedural motion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against? So carried. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, instead of waiting till the end of tonight, motion on notice, Councillor Hume has now brought Councillor Goyne's motion forward, so we'll hear that before the planning item. So if you have to travel home to the West Tamar Council, for example, you'll get an earlier start. So thank you, Councillor Hume. I'll now move into the omnibus items. 4.1, confirmation of the minutes. That the minutes of the council meeting held on the 11th of November 2024 have been circulated. Are there any issues arising? There being none, I now move on to 4.2, Mayor's communication, and 4.2.1, Mayoral correspondence. I would like to table a letter from the Minister for Local Government, the Honourable Kerry Vincent, MLC, regarding the future of local government review. I'd also like to table a letter from the Commissioner for Transport regarding the recently released 2 key documents relating to walking, wheeling and riding. Thank you, CEO. And I'd also like to table a letter from me to Mr Dylan Monks of the Risdon Vale Fire Brigade, congratulating Mr Monks on being recently awarded the 2024 Tasmanian Youth Volunteer of the Year. Congratulations and thank you for your service, Dylan. Thank you, CEO. I now have the great pleasure to call upon Councillor Chong to announce the Keep Australia Beautiful Awards. Thank you, Councillor Chong.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I've mentioned a couple of times before, the Richmond Advisory Committee put Richmond and the Bicentennial Program into the Keep Australia Beautiful Awards, which were awarded, must be another word for that somewhere, a few weeks ago, and we are proud winners of a Heritage and Cultural Event Award for a special award for an outstanding event, and Council was awarded a category for Richmond in the 1,500 to 2,000 population size, specifically referencing the general nature of Richmond and how well it's upkept. So a big thank you to the staff who look after it.
Thank you, Councillor Chong, and congratulations to the award recipients. Colleagues, last week, Councillor Chong, the CEO and myself were delighted to meet in this chamber some very impressive young Clarence residents, Joeys and Cubs from the Sanford Scout Group. George, aged 6, Oriana, aged 7 and Charlotte, aged 8, recognised the need for a new park at Lewis Park. in 7 Mile Beach. And in recognising the need for change, George, Oriana and Charlotte devised their own survey form and hand-delivered this around the 7 Mile Beach village. They had an enviable return and engagement rate. Ms Wicks, you'll be extremely impressed, with the overwhelming result being the community's desire for a better park, specifically one with a pump track, a basketball hoop, a climbing frame and a better set of swings. George, Oriana and Charlotte have provided an overview of their presentation, and I'll have that. And they're watching at home tonight, they assured me, as well as a copy of the survey results as well, which is absolutely fantastic to see that they engage with the youth of the 7 Mile Beach area. And as I said to these young, impressive individuals, their timing is perfect as we're about to head into to budget deliberations now. On behalf of Council, I'd like to thank George, Oriana and Charlotte for their initiative, as well as the PAC leader, Sue Hovington, and the other parents and carers who assist with Sanford Scouts, and the many leadership and life skills they share with these amazing young Tasmanians. And if we all took as much care and interest in our community as George, Oriana and Charlotte, our world would be so much better. I would also like to take, thank you CEO, this opportunity to invite those members of the community who attend live stream or playback council meetings take part in our consultation on council meetings time change on the back of a motion by Councillor Hunter some meetings ago now. We're interested in knowing the community's preference, whether you're happy with the 7 o'clock start time or you'd like something different. So this consultation is open at the moment on Council's Your Say platform, so please jump online and let your thoughts be known. Moving on, my diary entries from the 12th of November to the 2nd of December have been circulated, as well as the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Wendy Kennedy, who have also represented me, and I thank them as always for that. 4.3, council workshops as listed on the agenda. 4.4, tabling of petitions. CEO, are there any petitions this evening?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Reports from outside bodies. 4.5, the Copying Refuse Disposal Site Joint Authority. Councillor Walker.
As per the agenda.
Thank you very much. Tasway South, Councillor Warren. And there's nothing to report in either Tas Water Corporation or the Greater Hobart Committee. Moving now to 4.6, the weekly briefing reports. The weekly briefing reports of the... Oh, excuse me. Sorry, Councillor Chong. You did give me a heads up. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I please table the August minutes of the Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee, the October minutes of the Richmond Advisory Committee and the draft AGM and committee meeting for Cycling South in October?
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Are there any other reports from... Thank you, Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to table the meeting minutes from the Sustainability Advisory Committee. The meeting was held on November 25th. And the meeting minutes from the Australian Coastal Councils Association, the meeting held the 18th of November.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I also note that we have the Audit Panel Chairperson's report, and I'd call for a mover of the recommendation that be accepted. Councillor Chong, thank you. Second, and Councillor Warren. Do you wish to speak to this at all, Councillor Chong or Councillor Warren? All right, I'll put the motion that report be accepted. All those in favour? Thank you. Now moving on to the weekly briefing reports, 4.6. The weekly briefing reports of the 11th, 18th and 25th of November 2024 have been circulated to councillors. Are there any matters arising? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The 11th of November 2024, the Druthi Peninsula, I beg your pardon, Structure Plan project. On page 8, it refers to, amongst other things, that Realm Studios consultancy team, Realm, have provided their draft gap analyses reports as well as an outline of the draft structure plan. My question to you, Mr Mayor, is this available in draft form for circulation to councillors?
Thank you, Councillor James. Mr Marr.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor James, for the question. No, the purpose of the report is to explain that we received those draft reports and they're not yet complete enough to distribute to the councillors to therefore inform a workshop. So the purpose of the memo was to say that we'll push that off until the end of January, where hopefully we'll have sufficient information and a good enough quality of draft reports to satisfy Councillor James.
Thank you, Mr. Maher. Any other matters, Councillor James?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. The 18th of November, state election promises received by the Clarence City Council on page 11. The bottom section, the following groups have also received funding for work to be undertaken on council assets. I refer to the Rosny Bowls Club, installation of a synthetic green for $180,000. Was this part of a submission that council prepared in relation for funding, or was this done by the Bowls Club?
No, I can say it was nothing to do with council. It was an approach during election period that the Rosny Bowls Club took their own initiative, approached candidates, spoke, as I understand it, with at least two main parties, and may have spoken with the Greens as well. We're aware they spoke with both Labor and Liberal parties, and clearly the Liberals were successful, and they've now agreed to come through with $180,000.
That's great news. Will council have any say in the use of those funds, or will it be strictly up to the Board of Management of the Rosny Bowls Club?
I understand as it is a council asset that we will be involved. Mrs. Mayoral, CEO. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. The short answer is yes. Being a council asset, we'll have some oversight of that project.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor James? Anything else from colleagues regarding the weekly briefing reports? Well, colleagues, I note that we're at the end of our omnibus items. Can I please have a mover for the omnibus motion? Councillor Goyne, seconded Councillor Chong. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. All right, moving now on to item 5, public question time. There are no public questions on notice. 5.3, answers to previous questions taken on notice. There's one from Mrs. Joanne Marsh, as listed in the agenda. 5.4, questions without notice. Are there any questions from the gallery this evening? Mrs. Marsh, thank you. Name and suburb, please.
Joanne Marsh, Belrive. The Community News says business in Clarence is booming. And I just note in here it says, in our own business operations earlier this month, Council launched a new website with the primary aim of creating a better user experience. On November the 19th, Council posted a notice claiming that it feels extremely disappointed in the government's handling of the HPC decision and process. I believe that this statement lacks balance and appears to attribute these beliefs to all staff and councillors. I don't believe that starting a blame game makes for a better user experience. I believe it actually fuels discord in the community. So my question is, who authorised this statement, and does that person also have the authority to remove it?
Yeah, Mrs. Marsh, thank you for your question. That was a statement taken from my media release representing council. Disappointed with the process. Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Your question.
It was quick. Brian Chapman's my name, from the Belrive Bluff up the top, and with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I've got two quick questions.
Well, we'll go with the first one.
Go with the first one, see how it goes. Last Friday's schools triathlon event at Belrive Beach attracted around 3,000. As expected by local residents, motorists parked across driveways, on nature strips, blocked intersections and pathways. As usual, council and police commendably responded to residents' complaints. A cricket or football match at the nearby stadium usually attracts more than double that number, and potentially 15,000 or 5 times as many as on Friday. All these events are held in a place with absolutely minimal parking, causing pandemonium and congestion. If council continues to attract these events and keep the stadium, is it able to future plan the area by initially consulting with residents?
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your question. I will just remind you and everyone else, though, that questions are to be kept brief. So let's just
Not
Concentrate
brief
on that, please, in
enough.
future. CEO, would you like to provide an answer, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I understand the question is about future planning of parking around the Bellreeve Oval area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep. So at this point in time, Council has developed a master plan for the Queen Street and Victoria Esplanade area. Part of the planning around the Queen Street section relates to traffic management and parking, and specifically that link between Bellreeve Village and the Oval. We, as you know, actively manage parking through events, and we approach that dynamically. So we can and do periodically review how parking is being managed in the area, but it is handled on an event-by-event basis. Friday was a disappointing event in the sense that a number of people conducted themselves in terms of their parking in a very unsatisfactory manner, and it wasn't something that we were particularly comfortable with.
We might just, if you take a seat, Mr. Chairman, if you just take a seat, we'll just see, because we have to be fair to everyone. Are there any other questions for the public gallery this evening? Mr. Chapman, the floor is yours. Thank you.
It's a little bit shorter. Over the last 10 years, this council has attracted substantial proposals by others for public areas of Ralphs Bay, Rosny Hill, Kangaroo Bay and more recently Rosny's Parks. All these proposals failed to materialise, and initially poor community consultative methods may not have helped. Does Council have a planning officer who appropriately consults with Council's special committees on public land development issues prior to consulting with the community? I could leave this with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. CEO, please.
Thank you. I'll take that one on notice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the gallery? Yes, ma'am. Name and suburb, please.
My name's Sue Hindley and I'm from Dulcott. So following Port Hedland motion on the 11th of October, Councillor Camilo Blanco sent emails on the 23rd of October and the 29th of October. Can you clarify that these were received by the Council?
CEO?
Thank you. I don't recall receiving anything from Port Hedland, but I'll need to check our records to be certain about the other what contact we did have. So I'll take that on notice.
Thank you. Name and suburb, please, ma'am.
Kimberly Elford, Lindisfarne. Does the following TGA guidelines keep council safe from litigation if someone is vaccine injured in a council immunisation clinic?
CEO.
Thank you. I'll have to take that on notice. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Before I ask you to ask a question, under our meeting procedures, we're limited to 15 minutes. Mr. Chapman took 2 questions. If there are a number of questions, I'm happy to extend that slightly this evening to accommodate the public gallery. Yeah. Councillor Mulder.
Yeah, I understood that question time was not to relate to matters before the council when that was the role of deputation time.
Thank you. That's a good question, Councillor Mulder. The questions need to not be directly on the subject matter of a motion. So from that point of view, it's worth hearing the question first and then making a decision on that.
So is that clear? Name and suburb, please.
I'm not sure then. If I was just going to say regarding Councillor Goyne's motion, I'm Sky from Cambridge, by the way.
Sky, I'm sorry.
Sky McCarthy.
That's going to contravene our rules. I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right.
We have to listen to the debate.
No questions regarding.
There are plenty of deputations. We're maxed out with the deputations tonight, and 80% of them are on your line of thinking, I'm pretty certain. So
no questions.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, no, not only because it relates to Councillor Goyne's motion, as Councillor Mulder pointed out. because you referenced her motion. So I'm sorry, not on this occasion. Excluding Mr Chapman, are there anyone else that would like to ask questions? All right, they're being...
The gallery's a little bit confused. There are other questions. It's just they're not sure if this is the place that they can ask them.
Well, we're actually timed out now anyway.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
But as I said, the deputations are fairly solid tonight. No worries. Thank you. So now we move to item number 6, which is deputations by members of the public. Members of the public making a deputation are reminded that they are limited to 3 minutes, and a timer will sound at the end of that time. In the interest of fairness, I will strictly enforce the time limit. Also, a gentle reminder, please, of my opening remarks this evening. Councillor Mulder.
I know you're a little annoyed with me, but I think it ought to be pointed out that my point of order related to questions, but that doesn't mean they can't make deputations.
No, we're aware of that, Councillor Mulder. Thank you. All right, Councillor C, are there any deputations this evening? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 5 deputations tonight. The first deputation is from Dr Julie Sladden in respect to Councillor Goyne's motion at 9.2, sorry.
So, good evening, Councillor Dr Sladden. Your name and suburb, please.
Julie Sladden, Lagana. Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors. Tonight I'm speaking in my personal capacity. In September this year, Russell Broadbent and 26 co-signatories notified the Prime Minister of a report by Canadian virologist Dr David Speaker, who found concerning levels of residual DNA in 3 Australian vials of COVID mRNA vaccines, exceeding the TGA's safety limits by up to 145 times. This report confirms similar findings from over 5 independent laboratories worldwide. Some of these findings are now in peer-reviewed literature, raising alarm from the scientific community. Many of you will have consulted the TGA for more information. It's important to note the TGA's operational budget is 96% funded by the pharmaceutical industry, prompting calls for greater transparency. In refuting the DNA contamination report, the TGA makes the following assertions. All COVID-19 vaccines approved in Australia have been rigorously tested. But these vaccines were granted approval through the TGA's provisional approval pathway, requiring a lower burden of proof with no medium or long-term safety data. There were no carcinogenicity or genotoxicity studies done prior to the rollout. The product tested in Pfizer's clinical trials were manufactured using different processes. Process 1, that was used in the trial, and process 2, which was actually used on the population. This raises serious questions about the trial data validity and safety. The TGA says no regulator has established a causal link between COVID vaccines and cancer, and there is no evidence of mRNA vaccines resulting in integration of residual DNA in the human genome. However, clinical trials were too short to determine a cancer incidence, and when we asked for these data in FOIA 5275, we were told these documents didn't exist. While it's still considered a theoretical risk, plasmid DNA integration has been demonstrated in laboratory conditions in ovarian cancer cell lines and normal stem cells from colon tissue. Scientists are currently studying tumour samples from people with cancer who have received COVID-19 mRNA products. It will only be a matter of time before the results are clear. Australia has recorded 140,000 adverse event reports, including over 1,000 deaths, making these vaccines responsible for more reported adverse events than all other vaccines combined in the past 53 years. Research shows there is significant variability in adverse event reports between batches. Last year, Schmeling et al. Showed that 71% of the suspected adverse events in a Danish population came from just 4.2% of batches. We need independent assessment of all batches, especially the early ones used to vaccinate most Australians. In Saturday's Examiner newspaper, Professor David Adams from UTAS wrote, "It's a sign of a healthy local democracy for a council to take the time to at least consider the view that there may be more risks than we thought with the COVID vaccines."
Thank you, Dr Sladden. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Our second speaker tonight is Ms Philippa Rice in respect to Councillor Goyne's motion.
Name and suburb, please, Ms Rice.
Hello, I'm Philippa Rice from Claremont. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy and councillors. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm speaking in my personal capacity as well. I'm a registered nurse and a major in the Australian Army Reserves. You have an emailed copy of my full deputation speech, including my Clarence GP's personal and professional experience, and I hope you took time to read that today in your very busy days. I'll cover a few key points now. There were many red flags for me at the beginning of the COVID vaccine rollout, including changing the definition of vaccine to accommodate mRNA gene therapy, lack of informed consent given to health practitioners to the public. Some colleagues I knew wrote "I do not consent" on their consent forms and they were injected anyway. The government chanting safe and effective for new products when they were minimally trialled in humans and the trial rates had all died. No proof was given back on these claims. Lack of disclosure of ingredients in the injections shown by empty inserts with the vials. Lack of liability with the manufacturers and the liability protection under the PrEP Act. Claiming they were approved when they were only provisionally approved on the emergency use authorisation. Claims the ingredients would remain in the deltoid muscle of the injected arm. Regular side effects following injection. Gaslighting and lack of reporting of side effects. Encouraging staff who were not nurse immunisers to give these injections. Opening venues in communities and schools to reach more people without sufficient regard to safety and best practice. Lack of autopsies. Claims of death due to COVID determined by high cycle thresholds and thus high false positive PCR swabs, radical dismissal of natural immunity, withholding effective treatments in lieu of vaccination, conflicts of interest and financial gain, refusing treatment or medical care for those declining vaccination, injecting lactating and pregnant women, usually not advised, government claims they could inject your children without parental consent, and ongoing injections required for variants. As a nurse immuniser, I could not in good conscience inject people, violating my ethics as a healthcare practitioner, unknown if I would cause more harm than anticipated benefit. At no stage were we given risk assessments in determining your risk of COVID with or without the injections, or risk of injury by the injections. Sick leave around me went up. Many staff reported side effects verbally, but did not follow to the Australian database of adverse event notification. So our data is not representational. Cardiologist Dr. Peter Culler laments, "I have never seen something so injurious to the human body. It invades the heart, causes brain and heart damage, invades the bone marrow, stimulates antibodies to attack cells and platelets, causes blood clotting and damage to blood vessels like we've never seen. Turbo cancer, a rapid aggressive form, became a new thing. The Pfizer report shows there were so many adverse reports in the first 3 months that they had to hire 2,400 new employees." Now, we've all seen these injuries and the mental health impacts are colossal. This is Ed Dowd's book, Cause Unknown. Who had heard of sudden adult death syndrome or SADS prior to 2021?
Thank you, Ms Rice.
Public welfare is at stake, our children's future and every generation.
Thank you, Ms Rice. Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next deputation is from Mr Victor Marsh in respect to the Save Rosny's Parks group.
Good evening, Mr Marsh. Name and suburb, please.
Victor Marsh, I live on the Bluff. This is for Annie. The iconic Australian movie The Castle has a direct correlation with the plight of this community when we found out that Rosny Parks were going to be offloaded by this council to the AFL to build a high-performance training centre. The fictitious statement made by retired QC Laurie Hemmel on just terms comes to mind. People in this community were in a state of shock when they found out due process didn't occur here. How on earth could councillors on the 11th of the 12th 23 vote for a motion, whether it was a recommendation or not, to support this development when they didn't have the relevant information in front of them, i.e. geotech, surveying, environmental reports, as well as an ecological assessment? So much for all the time and money spent on the City Heart project and the $145,000 wasted on an electric pole we were forced to proceed with. But it showed that this council didn't have a social licence or a mandate to proceed with this doomed development from the get-go. This reeks of a lack of due diligence and poor governance and an uncertain feasibility outcome. So something had to be done. These parks are not weed-infested wastelands and full of pine trees, as some councillors would have you believe. In fact, there are a great variety of species of trees, including 173 tagged blue gums, a habitat for the critically endangered swift parrot, Also, there is an orchid meadow, a waterway and various kinds of flora and fauna. The events and activities that now can be enjoyed by everyone are boundless. So the community said no. We're going to fight to save our parks. A small group of residents got together and formed the Save Rosny's Parks group. These people didn't pretend to be anything special. They're just people living in a special place called Clarence, but they soon grew in number and became passionate and committed to fight against what they believed was an injustice. The way they bonded together was unbelievable. The more they were ridiculed and abused, the stronger they became. This group will go down in folklore for years to come for standing up to this council, the AFL and the government. Communities across Australia will be inspired to fight their local councils and developers who want to take away their green open spaces and follow in the footsteps of this brave group of people. It's time this council starts working with and for the community instead of against it. Annie, we miss you so much.
All right, there's a number of deputation. CEO, please.
Thank you. Our next deputation is from Ms Catherine Eagles in respect to Councillor Goyne's motion.
Ms Eagles, name and suburb, please.
Yes, my name is Catherine Eagles. I'm from Lindisfarne, and I thank the Mayor and councillors for this opportunity to speak. I've had about 20 years' experience in journalism, print journalism and marketing and PR. And I have to take my glasses off. I'd like to make 3 points about the issue which affects all families in Clarence, indeed all families in Australia. Firstly, did you know, you've just been told, that more than 100,000 injuries and over 1,000 deaths with clear evidence pointing to the so-called vaccines as to the culprit have been reported to the TGA? This is more than all previous vaccines in Australian history combined. But the TGA has responded with little more than blacked out pages on a FOI request. Secondly, why are these horrifying numbers not reported in the mainstream media? Why have you not heard about them? That's what I'm here to tell you. Well, one reason is the international media censorship system that has been set up to maximise financial benefits flowing from advertising, including government funding. Any negative publicity which could affect sales is labelled misinformation or disinformation or completely omitted. This censorship system includes 1, the Trusted News Initiative, TNI, which is an international alliance of news media, social media and technological companies, corporations. It includes our own ABC. And secondly, NewsGuard Technology Incorporated, which provides services such as misinformation tracking and brand safety for advertisers, search engines, social media platforms, cybersecurity firms and government agencies. There's also the extremely powerful digital industry group, Digi, which plays a big part in drafting Australian government legislation. Members of Digi include Meta, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, eBay and X and many more. Digi drafted the proposed legislation.
Thank you, Ms Eagles. I'm sorry, we have to call it there. 3 minutes is the allowed time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Our final deputation tonight is Ms Gail Sorbian in respect to Councillor Goyne's motion.
Welcome, Ms Sorbian. Name and suburb, please.
Hi, my name's Gail Sorbian. I'm from Orford. I've come here tonight as a person that has worked in general practice for over 20 years and nearly 6 years in a public hospital as an administrative assistant. I worked all through COVID in 2020 on a medical certificate until I was mandated to have the experimental injections, which I declined on medical grounds. We have set up a memorial, as you came through, called the Forest of the Fallen on the lawns in front of the council chambers. We are a voice for the voiceless, as the COVID-19 injection injured and those that have lost their lives, including children, are not being heard. They have been ostracised from the medical and financial help. They were told it was safe and effective, and for some that may be the case, but for many it is not. I have tabled documents from the Pfizer trials that have 9 pages of adverse events of special interest. I have witnessed many of these happening in my own family and close friends. I know of 3 with heart irregularities requiring medication, 3 having heart attacks requiring stents, 1 other has a pacemaker inserted, another 2 have had aneurysms, 2 had strokes, another 2 with aggressive pancreatic cancer. 1 has passed away last year. This was always a trial drug being given under emergency use authorisation, and as such was under the black triangle scheme of reporting adverse reactions for pharmacovigilance and safety signals. This has not been done. If there is any chance that a drug is causing damage, why are we not halting the administrating of it? As it certainly does not stop transmission or contraction. We cannot risk our children's future health, and I implore the council members to pass the motions requested tonight. The pharmaceutical companies' contracts with governments worldwide gave them complete indemnity. They have made billions, and the injured have lost their careers, their health, their homes, with no means to remedy their situation. This is an abomination.
Thank you, Ms. Sorbian. Thank you, Ms. Sorbian. I note that we're at the end of our item number 6, deputation by members of the public, and as per the procedural motion moved by Councillor Hume, we now move directly to item 9.2, notice of motion setting in the name of Councillor Goyne, public advocacy on reported DNA contamination COVID-19 vaccinations. You move that motion, Councillor Goyne. Is there a seconder? Sorry, what are we doing here? Are we moving an amendment or are we moving this motion? All right. Okay. So has this been circulated by email? Is there a hard copy? There are hard copies? Is there a hard copies? There are hard copies, Councillor James, in your papers.
I don't think
it was emailed.
No, it's coming now, Councillor James.
I was looking.
It was emailed, definitely, but I hadn't seen a hard copy. Yeah.
Is it an amendment? Okay. All right. Thank you. So while this is being circulated, it's actually an alternate motion.
I'm happy for it to be taken as an amendment.
All right. The author of this alternate motion, the Deputy Mayor, tells me that she's happy to have this moved, it's actually an amendment to the motion. So we need to have your motion moved and seconded, and then we put the amendment, which is then acceptable to the mover and the seconder, that then becomes the motion. All right. So for those watching at home and in the public gallery, I'm sorry this appears a bit messy, but we will get there. Do we have the motion to put up on the alternate motion? Well, first of all, you'll move the motion, saying your name, seconded by the Deputy Mayor.
Correct.
All right. So that's the motion. The Deputy Mayor is now moving an alternate motion. Councillor Mayoral, please wait. Please just, this is going to be, we're going to go round and round the mulberry bush if we jump in here. That's acceptable to you, Councillor Goyne? All right. So this now becomes the motion. Standing in your name, seconded by Councillor Ritchie. All right. So do we have this alternate motion on the screen? Here we go. All right. So for the benefit of everyone, Councillor Goyne, would you like to read out your alternate motion? We won't start the clock yet.
Okay, thank you.
Would you read out the alternate motion, please?
Yes, thank you. So the alternative motion is A, that Council notes the material provided in attachments 1, 2, 3 and 4 of the original motion.
B, that Council recognises this matter as a public advocacy issue and reaffirms its commitment to transparency, public confidence and accountability within our public health institutions. That C, in the interests of public health, Council supports the calls for an independent investigation into the concerns that have been raised about synthetic DNA contamination in Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines used in Australia. And that D, that Council authorises the CEO to write to the Tasmanian Minister for Health, the Tasmanian Director of Public Health and the Premier to forward a copy of attachments 1, 2, 3 and 4 as seen in the original motion, and request that the government raise these concerns at a national level on behalf of the people of Tasmania and report back to Tasmanian councils and the broader community accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Goines. That's the motion. All right. Is everyone got to now have a copy of the motion? Excellent. The public gallery is aware, they can see it on the screen. Wonderful. All right. Councillor Goines, moving your motion, please.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Deputy for taking time to draft her alternate motion. I'd also like to thank the many deputies who I hope have enlightened those around this table on some of the concerns and the reasons why we believe that this is Council's duty to act on this matter. Firstly, I'd like to say I'm not here to argue science with you. I'm not a doctor. And last I checked, no one around this table is. The only doctor in this room is Dr. Julie Sladden, who I would like to doubly thank for taking the time to drive from the other end of the state, but also for her informative deputation on the very real risks of contaminated vaccines, and applaud her on bringing a similar successful motion to the West Tamar Council. However, I am here as a member of Council elected by the people. I believe I have an ethical and legal obligation to our residents to champion for their safety, especially as new information suggests that the presence of synthetic DNA in these vaccines could pose health risks. These are the same people who elected me, and I have requested through them that I bring this motion forward to you tonight, and they support the Deputy Mayor's alternate. Every single person who has come to support tonight has lost loved ones, their own health, their careers, homes or their families because they were either forced by the government to participate in a medical experiment or they chose not to, choosing instead to be ostracised, outcast and unemployed for upholding their right to personal bodily autonomy. I myself was deemed too risky to study online because of my personal choice. I have hundreds of people who would have liked to make deputations tonight, those that will tell you their stories of miscarriages, myocarditis, seizures, hysterectomies, myalgias and all sorts of vaccine injuries. But unfortunately, due to council meeting restraints, these people cannot tell the stories of death, illness, tragedy and loss. You all saw the forest of the fallen outside. I hope each and every one of you took time to at least read some of the stories of these victims. And tonight I ask that you have the courage to be the voice for them, those who can no longer speak for themselves. But most importantly, I urge you to ensure due diligence with passing this motion so that we can do our very best under the constraints of local government to ensure that there are no further names added to the forest. I hope that you have read in detail the attachments in my motion. These were painstakingly put together by the town of Port Hedland, who first passed a similar motion, followed by the West Tamar, where Dr Sladden is a councillor, then Ceduna. All around Australia, councillors in coming weeks are bringing forward similar motions. The world is watching. This motion aims to address serious health concerns regarding reported serious synthetic DNA contamination in the Australian COVID-19 vaccines. Lastly, I will remind you that under the Local Government Act of 1993, councils have the following functions and powers. The functions and powers are 1A, to provide for the health, safety and welfare of the community, B, to represent and promote the interests of the community, C, to provide for the peace, order and good governance of the municipal area, and 2, in performing these functions, a council is to consult, involve and be accountable to their community. A council may do anything necessary or convenient to perform its functions, either within or outside its municipal area. In its own Commonwealth Government report released in October, we consistently made 3 relevant observations. 1, the government relied heavily on health advice to justify many COVID actions, often to the detriment of other economic and wellbeing considerations. 2, the health advice and modelling that informed decisions was selective and lacked transparency. The evidence base and risks were rarely made public. 3, government's overreach, with many responses being heavy-handed, rushed and controlling, including mandatory vaccinations. It is a sign of a healthy local government to at least consider the view that there may be risks associated with mRNA vaccinations. All that we are asking is for further investigations and some answers from the levels of government whose job this really is. However, helping to rebuild trust in governments needs to start locally and in a safe, respective, democratic space. And I believe the City of Clarence and these chambers are just that. I urge my colleagues to support.
Thank you, Councillor Goyne. Seconder, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I'd like to thank Councillor Goyne and all of those people who made representations this evening and put forward submissions in relation to this matter. They're greatly appreciated. Science is around us in everything that we do. Science informs public policy, personal decision making, and is a vital part of modern life that helps us navigate through problem solving and the development of solutions. And the COVID-19 pandemic was no different. And in response to this global pandemic, we saw governments around the world investing billions of dollars into scientific research with the expectation that we would grow knowledge and that we would try and bring forth technologies that would minimise the suffering and the death associated with the disease. But as part of the evolution, if you will, of the science society model, there will always be naturally points of contention that arise when something doesn't go particularly as we might have expected. And it doesn't surprise me that we're at this point, because I think it's fair to say that there have been concerns around the COVID-19 vaccine since the beginning, due to the accelerated approval process of the COVID-19 vaccines and diagnostics under heightened clinical, political and economic pressure, disagreements within the scientific community and the regulatory approaches to standards of quality, safety and efficacy. So there's little wonder, in my view, that many people are left with concerns and questions, and governments must start to demonstrate to the public that they're prepared to be transparent about the risk of vaccines and their research. Because there's no doubt, I'm not a doubter, there's no doubt that vaccines have saved more lives than any other health intervention, second only to clean water access. And immunisation programs have dramatically decreased mortality from diseases in Australia and worldwide. But like so many things that have great value to us, eternal vigilance is required when we're dealing with public health, and the very motion before us relates to the concerns raised about the alleged discovery of DNA contamination in the mRNA COVID vaccines in Australia. The reasons for the concerns have been ventilated by the representatives. We've heard about the Canadian virologist report, the request from the federal MP for an internal independent investigation federally, the article, the BMJ article around the differences in the processes and what was assessed and then what was actually rolled out to the public, the concerns around reporting of adverse reactions, the failures of the TGA, matters around excess deaths reporting, and of course we've seen AstraZeneca report that they've withdrawn their vaccines globally after the company admitted it could cause adverse side effects. And I would say, importantly, wherever you land on these things, it's really important for citizens in a healthy democracy to be able to question the science, because after all, that's the very basis, the very foundation of scientific methodology. And it's not the first time that contamination of vaccines has led to tragic outcomes. And some examples can be seen that include the contaminated rotavirus vaccines in 2010 and contaminated hepatitis B vaccines in 2015. And these weren't part of the usual collateral damage, and I hate that term, that's used to achieve herd immunity, which we don't have on a whole range of processes in our country. But with these facts in mind, I'm always disappointed to hear people raise or accuse people who raise concerns of being conspiracy theorists, ignorant, flat earthers. it's clearly not settled amongst the scientific community themselves, and I think we should be mindful that the motivations of people are pure. They're about their own health, their personal health, their family's health, the health of our community. It's not about money or power for these people. So I think we need, unlike other stakeholders, so we need to remember that. And quite frankly, I was pretty ashamed of the way that Australia went through the COVID pandemic. Many years ago, I assisted a resident, some of you remember Poppy Laputnik, who raised concerns with me about possible cancer clusters at Bellerive. Instead of doubting her, I actually lobbied really hard, one person only, but I lobbied really hard to have all those sites tested by the health department. And I did that successfully, and it came back all clear. But you know what? It was important that that person's concerns were treated with dignity and respect and the attention to public health that they deserved. Now, that's what this motion's all about. How do we work to build public trust in institutions of government, science and healthcare system? And that's far better than what we've done around bullying people, excluding them socially and economically. Coercive measures don't work.
Thank you, Deputy
I
Mayor.
support the motion.
Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and may I say from the outset, I'd like to thank those members of the public who, submitted their representations, and I read every one of them, and it took some time to do it because there's quite a lot of work and a lot of effort put into it. Now, this motion differs quite considerably from the motion that we were provided with, and up until the beginning of this meeting, believed it was on the agenda and therefore it was presumably to be debated, and then at the last minute another motion has been put up. And okay, it probably clarifies some of the things, but in essence it doesn't really fall within the ambit of a local council, in my opinion, to be able to, as part of Part D in particular, for the CEO to write to the Tasmanian Minister for Health and the Tasmanian Director of Public Health and the Premier to forward a copy of attachments 1, 2 and 3 and request the state government raise these concerns at a national level on behalf of the people of Tasmania and report back to Tasmanian councils and the broader community. Now, this is on behalf of the people of Tasmania. Now, that isn't necessarily the case because this particular issue, in my opinion, was handled extremely well at the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'd like to commend the Minister, the Premier, Peter Gutwin, how he was able to instill...
Excuse me, sorry. I will, in fairness to all speakers, please, silence from the gallery. Thank you, Councillor James.
Was able to instill in the community to be able to take the necessary action to become vaccinated because of the threat that it did impose to people in the community. And I lined up outside the Eastern Shore Clinic in Lincoln Street, along with about 20 others, when the first vaccination was basically raised and so on. And we lined up. People lined up because they wanted to be vaccinated because of the threat that was actually in the community and had been obviously at a pandemic level throughout Tasmania. And even our Prime Minister at the time took the lead and the charge in communicating to the people of Australia to say, look, you've got to get vaccinated. This is a real threat, and the best way to us to sort of counter this particular disease is to get vaccinated. Now, I don't think it's appropriate, and even in the CEO's comments, he does say in the preamble, the Chief Executive Officer's comment, and I quote, "In the circumstances, adoption of the recommendation motion may place Council at odds with its obligations under Section 27 of the Public Health Act and conflict with the functions of the Director of Public Health under Section 71A of the Public Health Act," unquote. Now, we are really starting to go into a lot of these issues that is probably only one side of the coin, and there is the other side of many, many people who have
basically got through this particular disease and are thankful for their inoculations. And I've had the 7, and, you know, I've had 7 of them, and look at me, my age, and I did that because I was really conscious of the fact that my age is one of those age groups that is basically, is basically at risk in relation to this. I will not support this motion. I don't think it's our role to actually take down Part D or pursue it with our Premier, with in particular the Director of Public Health, because over the last 3 or 4 years, I believe we're in a better state of play with our inoculation process than we ever have been, and I will not support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Before I call anyone else, I will just make the point that the Chief Executive Officer's comments actually referred to the original notice of motion that's listed.
Thanks.
And I will, just for the benefit of colleagues, I've been advised a cleaner way, which is probably what Councillor Model was alluding to, is that the original motion, it'll be recorded in the minutes as being withdrawn and then moving the alternate motion, standing in the name of Councillor Goyne. So it's just a lot easier and cleaner for everyone. So I thank Councillor Mulder for his assistance there. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor Mulder, thank you.
Mayor, I'm conscious that some of these global issues, and that's what this one was, they have a personal touch point. And the Forest of the Fallen is one of those touch points. But we have to have a look at what it was. It was a crisis. No one ever said taking a vaccination was without risk. In fact, I think for the first months there was a worldwide virtual panic on trying to find a vaccination. And there were a few that started and didn't go up. It's no surprising that the very first one that actually made it wasn't as finely tuned and as robust as we'd like to be, and has consequently been withdrawn. Now, I haven't personally seen and looked at every one of those in the Forest of the Fallen. But I'd be highly surprised if in amongst there weren't a couple of people who I knew very well, who were immune compromised, they were frail and they were elderly, and they sat down and they took the best advice. They knew the risks involved, particularly for them, particularly in the earlier stages, and some of them have died. But compared to the ones who died, have a look at those early months, particularly in Italy and New York, where they were taking down, there were millions. Who would have ever thought that in a country like New York there would be mass burials? Mass burials. And this was prior to the vaccine. And the statistical evidence is quite clear. When the vaccines came along, the death rates started to decline.
Thank you. Please. Thank you, Councillor Mulder.
And as this went through, there were people. I admire the people who had a personal objection, and I always had difficulty with the direction that health professionals had to be vaccinated in order for them to do their job. I do think that there is a role here for people to not have their career destroyed on a matter of personal principle. But I would like to compare the people who died of, or as a result, or associated with taking the vaccine, compared to what I believe are the millions of people who particularly aged and infirm, who managed to survive it, because we all got it. None of us are immune from it, and there has been various iterations as we went through, and at any point I will not be taking it on. I would not be taking. But there are World Health Organisations, there are therapeutic goods administrations, and not just ours, but across the planet. And all these people are looking into these things. I don't think anyone has said that taking anything is necessarily entirely safe. I'm on a string of what I call the old man meds, and each one of those medications relating to hypertension, relating to gout, relating to reflux, relating to things, all have potentially adverse side effects. And those are the things, that we live with. It's a question of risk and balance, and it's something that individuals need to make. I won't be supporting this motion, principally because I don't think it's our role to be advocating on what is actually a scientific global phenomenon. And for say the science is settled, it's not the way science works. Science always moves on. Science always questions itself. There's a thesis put forward, and then an antithesis arises as the evidence is challenged, and a new synthesis arises, and it moves forward. It moves forward. But when you're in a situation that was facing the globe as a result of COVID-19, there have to be risks taken. And risks were taken. Sure, the trials were speeded up, and consequently down the track there's been a few bits and pieces that may not have gone the way we'd have hoped, but we have learnt and we have grown. I can also rest assured that when, not if, the next pandemic hits, we will do things differently.
Thank you, Councillor Mulder. Councillor Warren, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillors Goyne and Ritchie for nailing their colours to the mast on this one. I think it's instructive for voters to know what their elected councillors believe and how they go about researching important topics. I read a quote recently along the lines of, "It's a choice to be uninformed." And it's true. With almost all the world's knowledge at our fingertips via an internet search, if you have a particular niche interest, such as the mating habits of the Madagascan fossa, you'll be able to find that information on the internet, whereas previously you had to rely on an outdated set of encyclopedias. Similarly, if you went to school in the 1960s, where we were taught nothing about Tasmanian history before colonisation or about the impacts of colonisation, there's no longer any excuse for not informing yourself. The problem is that along with access to this wealth of information, there's a significant and increasing amount of misinformation, as well as deliberately misleading disinformation, such as we've seen in the recent US election. We often hear people say they've done their own research. When it comes to vaccines or medical information in general, unless you have a qualification in epidemiology and several years' experience in the field, your research is unlikely to be of the same quality and reliability as someone who's devoted their career to working in that area. Apparently only 2% of medical information on TikTok is accurate. Very occasionally, there'll be a lone voice which eventually manages to overturn commonly held wisdom. That's how science progresses, by looking at every new theory, testing it, and if it holds water, adjusting its position accordingly. But more commonly, that lone voice has probably gone off at a tangent and is easily debunked. It's all too easy to find sources that confirm your own biases or beliefs. Never before has it been so easy to find 20,000 people across the world who share and reinforce your worldview, which is why it's important to do the work and look at a range of views. So how do you distinguish between what's true and what's not? A good starting point is to look at the source and apply some critical analysis to the information available. Who wrote it? What's their background? Has it been peer-reviewed by others experienced in the field? Do they have links on their website to flat earthers, chemtrail conspiracies and mentions of the lizard men taking over the world?
Councillor Warren. Councillor Warren, excuse me, we asked... Councillor Warren, sit down, please. Stop the clock, please. I'll do that. So we started this meeting, I asked people to respect differing views. Does it mean that you take swipes of people in such a derogatory way? I'd ask you to please conduct yourself in a polite and professional manner in this chamber. Thank you. Sorry, so I won't have that for the public gallery either, thank you. But we have responsibility as elected members to conduct ourselves and to be beyond reproach. So, Councillor Warren, please restart the clock, Ms Ellis.
All medication carries a level of risk. I recently started taking blood pressure medication, largely due, I believe, to being on council. There's a risk of known side effects, but if I don't take it, I risk having a heart attack. The safety profile of vaccines and the debunking of the mistaken beliefs presented to us today is agreed by health authorities the world over. The Therapeutic Goods Administration in Australia, FDA in the US, Health Canada, MedSafe New Zealand, the Health Science Authority in Singapore, MHRA in the UK, to name but a handful. Are all these organisations lying to us? Or are they incompetent, or malicious, or owned by Big Pharma? If you believe any one of these things to be true, I ask you why? What do they have to gain from not carrying out rigorous testing and selling us faulty and unsafe vaccines? And close behind that question, I would ask you how. How could so many health authorities consistently come up with the same results and level of comfort? If there's a cover-up, why has nobody broken ranks and blown the whistle? If governments around the world could work together so effectively to pull off a massive conspiracy, then solving world peace, climate change and food insecurity should be a doddle. What scares me most is not that the governments of the world are implementing a gigantic cover-up, but they are so far from having the ability to implement such a scheme even if they wanted to. The level of cooperation required is not something we're seeing at any level of government. There's extensive, good quality, peer-reviewed, robust research available on the topic of vaccination for anyone who cares to look. I will not be supporting this motion.
All right, before I call the next speaker, the gallery, I will have to insist, please, this is the place for the contest of ideas. There are passionate views held on both sides of the debate. People are entitled to their view, no matter how unwell that may sit with you. They're entitled to put their view. I would just ask, please, that you listen respectfully and keep noise to a minimum.
But that's name calling.
No, sir, I'm not going to debate this with you. It was pointed out as to what's acceptable in this chamber. So can we just move forward here, please?
That was acceptable.
Sir, I'm not here to debate you. So I would just ask, please, that we continue with the debate now. Okay. No, sir, this is not a public forum.
How many of the people that didn't get the shot died because of...
Yeah, sir, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm sorry. Please leave. Well, it's actually democracy in action, a difference of views. Thanks, Freddie. Thank you. All right. So, members of the gallery, please, in fairness to everyone, this has to be a safe space that people feel comfortable to put differing views. I would ask, please, that the elected members be listened to in silence. Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for your management of the meeting this evening. Firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Goyne. You've continued to bring matters to us on council that I never expected to delve into, so thank you. I've learned a lot from the motions you've brought forward. As it's been mentioned multiple times tonight by various individuals, for me the issue is we are not experts in this field, nor will we ever be, nor do we necessarily need to be. And I commend those who have given deputations tonight, particularly those who have spoke out from the medical industry against those in their field. That takes a lot of courage for anyone to do, so thank you. For me, there's not enough information on both sides, and I've read all the deputations that have been given and a lot of information that's been provided. However, for me, good decision making is about weighing up both sides of the story. And even if I did have that information, this is not nearly enough time to really understand it and dive into it, to be well informed and feel like, hand over heart, I did the best to my ability. Now, I'm not saying that the information we've heard and we've seen outside and knowing just firsthand, some of these stories are true, I'm not doubting that, and it's heartbreaking, and I really feel for those individuals. And I hope that these matters can be taken to maybe the right area of interest, state government and the federal government, to investigate this further. For me also, our role is to represent and promote the interests of the community. Now, had a petition come forward with significant signatures from members of the Clarence community on this matter asking us to advocate, I might feel differently at this time. However, I won't be supporting this motion tonight based on what I've said this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Hunter. Councillor Chong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And can I start by thanking Councillors Goyne and Ritchie and all the people who wrote the deputations, which were many and varied, and I have spent much of the weekend reading them. I'm not going to support this motion, and there are, I suppose, two main reasons. Firstly, as some others have said, I don't think it's our role to do this as a council. I would certainly consider it, as Councillor Hunter has said, our role if we had a petition that we could then advocate. But based on what this motion wants us to do, I don't think as a council that's our role to do it. But I suppose for me, in some ways more importantly, and it comes to the passion that a number of people have used here. I lost a relative to COVID who wasn't vaccinated. The rest of the family was. This one person wasn't, decided he didn't want to be. She died. So for me, I have a passion. I have a passion that says if you can be vaccinated for these things, you should. Even understanding the issues that they might bring, sometimes you need to take that leap of faith. And I guess for me, I can't support this because I've seen the other side of the equation.
Thank you, Councillor Chong. Councillor Hume, please.
I would also like to thank Councillor Goyne and Councillor Ritchie for bringing this matter to our attention, and to all those who've come to the public gallery to watch, those who've made deputations. I encourage people to engage with council, even if council's response may not be the one they were looking for. But having said all that, my thoughts are along similar lines to colleagues who've spoken before. I take Councillor Warren's point, for example, that even though science is about challenging and questioning, and we can do research, but what's the validity of our research? Who are not scientists, we're not biochemists, we're not epidemiologists, against the people who are experts in those fields. And there are experts working for these authorities. They look at evidence that's provided to them, they question that evidence, they update their advice accordingly. That updated advice is what happened with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Targi updated their advice twice on the basis of what they found were real risks. Now, I acknowledge there are real risks. Those risks have been found and have been acknowledged. There are such things as adverse events, but not to the degree that some have suggested here tonight. Now, I listened to this figure of 1,000 deaths. It's important to understand that figure comes from the database of adverse event notifications. The fact that there is a notification that's put on that database does not mean that the event was caused by a vaccine. Of those 1,000 deaths, there were 14 that were found to be linked to a vaccine, and 13 of those were from the AstraZeneca vaccine. That was the blood clotting issue, which was known and then led to Atagi's updated advice. And yes, the number of thousands sounds like a lot, but you need to understand that with tens of millions of people being vaccinated, purely through chance, it would have been expected that a number of people would die soon after receiving a vaccine. It doesn't necessarily mean it was caused by the vaccine, but the scale of the rollout was of such a scale that would have happened regardless. Now, then the investigation ensues as to what exactly caused that death. But by accepting this motion, I do worry there is a reputational risk to the council. I do worry about the undermining of public health authorities and public health advice in putting this forward. Even though we're merely asking questions of the government, I do worry about that. And that's the reason I can't support this motion. I've had a bit of a look at the research and the TGA's response and the response to the TGA, but like I said, you do need a very sound medical understanding to understand those issues, understand about DNA transference, crossing cell boundaries into nuclei, and whether what was it called, fluoridation. I've forgotten the name of the the process by which Dr. Spiker found his results. I can't remember the word now, but what we need to understand is that there is always an exchange going on between researchers and public health authorities, but it's not just the TGA we're questioning here, it's actually the public health authorities in hundreds of countries around the world. I'm sure one of them, at least, or several, would have come to a different view if there was a real problem discovered and understood. Now, I note that it said that the TGA's budget is mostly funded by industry. Yes, but that's true. That's through fees and charges. When you levy fees and charges, somebody paying for parking, and Clarence doesn't necessarily dictate our parking policy. So it's important to understand that it's not. They're not sponsoring. They're paying because they're required to pay under a fee and charge regime. But like I said, it's not just the TGA being taken, held in question. It's a number of public health authorities around the world, and I believe that those authorities would change their view. In fact, they have changed their view according to research.
Thank you, Councillor Walker, Councillor Darko, and Councillor Kennedy. Do you wish to make a contribution? Thank you, Councillor Darko, please.
Thank you. COVID was and remains an extremely serious illness, and as previously mentioned, the vaccines have been overwhelmingly successful at preventing deaths and serious illnesses due to COVID. COVID denialism has arguably caused far more harm than the number of true cases of vaccine adverse effects. It's important to remember that correlation does not indicate causation, and that just because someone has passed away within a short period of having received the vaccine, it doesn't mean the vaccine caused it, as noted earlier. In large part, the vaccine hesitancy, which has resulted in a resurgence of illnesses we had previously completely eliminated, such as measles, is due to poorly researched and debunked information being circulated to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and undermine trust in public good. Each time we are asked to investigate and disprove reasonable concerns, we need to ensure that there is a basis for those concerns. Otherwise, we are wasting time and effort chasing our tails, and further fear is sown in processes that are proven and that save lives. In the same way that I will not hear denial of climate change, I do not believe that this report reaches the threshold of credibility required to override the overwhelming evidence. I do not want to aid the spread of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, as this report has been thoroughly debunked. Additionally, and importantly, I agree with the other colleagues that it is not appropriate for us to undermine public health authorities with the escalation noted in the motion. Thank you.
Okay, all right. There being no further speakers on this, Councillor Goyne, you're right of reply.
I must say I'm disappointed. I was really looking forward to your contribution, James.
Councillor Walker.
Sorry, Councillor Walker. I just wanted to add to my previously prepared right of reply that yes, we do fly our true colours. I have always flown mine. Unlike some people in this chamber, I don't need to go behind other people's backs to ask questions about people's personal medical decisions. So, you want to know why there's a conspiracy out there? Why the pharmaceutical companies? $90 billion US in profit. Bill Gates, for every dollar spent, said that we made $20. That's your why. So this motion does not seek to proclaim outcomes. It simply seeks to request the state government to assist to investigate what are legitimate concerns by our constituents. There is nothing to fear in doing so, and the sky will not fall in, the earth won't become flat, and in simply by passing on these concerns. I asked fellow councillors what there is to lose, and as it seems, we are going to be the only council thus far to vote against this motion. This is not about what is right, who is right, and your personal questions and opinions on vaccinations. This is about one question. If you thought your food was contaminated, would you expect somebody to step up and investigate this and inform you? I hope the information made available to you tonight has made you open your mind, shed your preconceived ideas of what a conspiracy theorist looks like, because all of the people here, they're doctors, lawyers, nurses, army majors, pharmacists, teachers. In fact, myself, a mere councillor, is the least credible in this room, and they elected me to speak on their behalf. We all hope that we are wrong and that these vaccines are safe and effective, but since when is asking for more data, more independent scientific data, unquestionable? We have a duty of care to the people of Clarence and Australia to advocate for them on this matter. You may not believe this is a council issue, but the state and federal governments made this our issue when they required these shots to be administered in and to the people of Clarence.
Thank you, Councillor Goyne. I'll put the alternate motion, seeing that I have Councillor Goyne, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, and showing on our screen. All those in favour? Those against? I declare that lost. Ladies and gentlemen, we've now dealt with Councillor Goyne's motion. It's been lost. You're welcome to stay for planning committee matters and the rest of the meeting, but if you'd like to leave now, please feel free to do so. We won't be offended. Thank you all very much for your interest in the democratic process, and may I just wish you all a very enjoyable and joyous Christmas. Thank you for your company this evening. Colleagues, we'll just take a quick moment. Thank you, Councillor Sladden. Mr Chapman, you're welcome to stay. See you next year. Well, colleagues, we now move back to item number 7, which is Planning Authority matters. I advise the Council now intends to act as a planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993. Our first motion before us this evening is 7.1, planning application for 11 Chilean Court, Sanford. I understand Councillor Hume will move an alternate motion. Councillor Hume? Oh, sorry. Beg your pardon? Oh, thank you. Councillors Hunter and Councillor Kennedy. Good that someone's on the ball. Thank you, Councillor Chong. Thank you both very much. And we've got Councillor Hume's alternate motion on the screen. Ms Ellis, please. Wonderful. Look at that. Just like clockwork. Thank you. All right. So with Councillor Hunter and Councillor Kennedy both declaring an interest, moved by Councillor Hume. Is there a seconder? Councillor Goyne. Thank you. Councillor Hume.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. The reason I've moved the alternate, which is for approval, obviously this is very similar to the application that we dealt with at a recent meeting on 16 Chilean Court. The issue is very much the same, although when you look at the noise assessment, the impact is actually less. I just want to give a bit of an explanation in planning terms on why I believe that this does actually comply with the scheme. And I suggested in my comments on 16 Chilean Court that we can disagree with the tribunal in regards to a sensitive use being established over the entire lot. And you know, when we do so, obviously there's no risk that, because there's no representation, so there's no risk that this will be subject to a challenge in the tribunal. But having said that, I think we have a reasonably arguable case. The tribunal decision, which establishes the principle that sensitive use is established over the full extent of the site, was in the case of Kennedy versus Clarence City Council. Now that we may know is the subdivision application that we refused, that was then appealed by the developer in the same area and related to the same quarry. Now, in establishing that principle, the tribunal argued that the performance criteria referred to a lot, not to the building on it. So that was what they actually said, paragraphs 66 and 67 of that decision, if you want to check it out. And it was, I understand it was also referred to in paragraph 83. So they said it refers to a lot. Now, the performance criteria they were talking about was actually P1, performance criteria 1, in standard C 9.6.1. In this application and the 16 Chilean Court application, we're actually dealing with the use standard C 9.5.2, which actually doesn't have any reference to a lot. It does talk about a sensitive use, but I think it can be interpreted from the criteria that sensitive can be constrained to a part of the lot. If you look at some of the language that's used in that, and I'll see if I can find an example. No, I didn't have it up on my... Oh, here we go. So, for example, point C, the extent of encroachment by the sensitive use into the attenuation area. Measuring the design, layout and construction of the development for the sensitive use to eliminate, mitigate or manage effects by emissions of the activity. Yeah, so those two paragraphs in particular, I think we can take as saying that it doesn't have to apply to the entirety of the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hume. Councillor Goyne.
I'm pretty sure I had everything to say that I needed to say at the last council meeting in regards to that matter, and I just wanted to thank Councillor Hume for bringing this motion, alternate motion, forwards and allowing some common sense to prevail this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Goyne. Councillor James.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I suppose, may I say that this is extract number 3. This is scenario number 3. Number 2 was we dealt with a meeting ago, I think, or close to that time. And what's interesting in this particular case is the officers have recommended for refusal, and they have based it on the clause C9.5.2A1, sensitive use within an attenuation area. And they've also gone into and quoted the TASCAT decision in relation to the attenuation code. And I would like to correct my colleague, Councillor Holm, in as much as it says that the principles should be observed in this assessment. A use is established over the full extent of the site, not at the extremities of a building or structure. So in this particular case, under the planning scheme, we are not necessarily dealing with a building. We're dealing with a use, a sensitive use, and the existing activity must be understood to include the fullest possible operating capacity associated with a level 2 permit EPN, not its current operation intensity, which is basically non-existent because it's not operating as such, but has the approval from the EPA and also MRT that they have a licence to operate a quarry, and that the quarry's code of practice has an acceptable standard, the level of 45 decibels, and this, where this development of this particular site is, it's within 35 metres north of the subject at its most northern aspect, So the proposed dwelling is to be located approximately 180 metres from the nearest boundary of the quarry site, as far from the quarry it can be practically located, but well within the attenuation areas for all permitted activities associated with the quarry. So I know that the quarry operator has lodged a subdivision, and of course that is good news, because at the end of the day he will obviously go through the process of moving to have that quarry site debunked. What's the terminology? It's I don't know. Rehabilitated. It's been a long night trying to digest all those wonderful representations earlier on. So, yeah, that word. Thanks. So, in all consciousness, I agree with the officer's recommendation. It falls within the quarry's operating platform. It's code of practice. It's within that area. It's so sensitive. It's not necessarily the building lot itself, but it's the use as part of the planning scheme. So I will not be supporting it. And I suppose this doesn't differ so much from the previous application, but of course it does differ from the first application that we dealt with back in 2020, I think it was, old council at the time, and that was under another process of building a lot rather than the use under this section of clause C9 5.2A1.
Councillor Mulder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, I'll be supporting the alternate, as I have on every occasion in this particular area. I commend Councillor Hume's attempt to, shall we say, dance through the planning scheme with his well-researched article. The bottom line is that under the planning scheme, this is technically not permitted. It's not permitted because there's a quarry operating there, and there's a quarry there with a licence. That licence includes permission to blast, although you would never need to do it. It resolves a thing. I've also took the time to stand at the top of the lot and walk around the places where the house would be and the thing. The whole lot is right in a triangle that ends up in the quarry. There's no natural earth mounds, there's no things, there's no attenuation. The fact is that this quarry doesn't make anything like the noise that you can get when up at Flagstaff. They are mining loose red gravel, which the best you need to do is dig it out with a backhoe and chuck it on a sifting machine. So there is noise there, and there is a certain level of noise, and I'm sure occasionally it goes above the 10 decibels when it's doing. In this particular case, as there have been a few others, the planning law is an ass, as in an American donkey, Mr. Mayor. And it doesn't permit a developer called Wilson Homes, like as if they've had any trouble with a house. But it's the nature of that area. And to add it all, what we're saying is that we can't give it to you now on strict planning applications, but give it 6 months when the quarry ceased operation, has revoked its licence and has been in the rehabilitation mode. Oh, then we can do it. And that's why there are times when there are no representations, when it's a common sense thing which can't be appealed. I think it is up to us. Discussions about the performance criteria and cherry-picking performance criteria. But the bottom line is this would produce an unjust outcome, if we were to go with the officer's recommendation. And that's no criticism of the officers. They've got no choice. That's what the planning scheme says. And every now and then, let's break the rules to get the right outcome. Let's break the rules to get the right outcome, knowing full well, in a short period of time, those particular obstacles would have actually been removed. So it just makes common sense that we get on with this and we break the rules. And here I go. I confess, I look forward to the prosecution.
Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? It's a hard act to follow, I grant it. Councillor Hume, would you care to
I would care to, thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I deny that I'm advocating breaking rules, Your Honour. I still stand by what I said, that there is a reasonably arguable case to be put that this complies with the scheme. And referring back to what Councillor James said, I would encourage him to read that tribunal decision. The principle that the...
Is it page 86?
Paragraph 67 of the...
Thank you.
Paragraph 67 of the tribunal decision.
Thank you, Councillor Hume.
P1 refers to a lot, not to the building on it. It's referring to a performance, a use standard and performance criteria that are in the subdivision use standards, not in the development use standards, and the development use standards don't have any reference to a lot. Therefore, I believe if you read the language in those performance criteria, you could reasonably argue that you could consider the sensitive use, which is actually the dwelling, and its use as a residential dwelling. It's that building. It's the place where the people are going to live. So yes, they're free to roam about their lot when they dwell on it, but my interpretation of the scheme is that because it's referring to a different use standard, and because that use standard doesn't refer to a lot, the tribunal's decision doesn't apply to that one in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hume. Well, colleagues, I'll put the alternate motion, which is for approval for 11 Chilean Court Sanford, subject to the conditions and advice, as moved by Councillor Hume. All those in favour? Against? So carried. Thank you. Please invite Councillor Hunter and Councillor Kennedy back in to join us. And I will just say that we conclude our deliberations of the Planning Authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993. We move now on to welcome back Councillor Kennedy. Hello, Councillor Hunter. Welcome back. Moving now to item 8, which is reports of officers. Termination on petitions tabled at a previous council meeting. There are none. Moving on to 8.2, asset management. 8.2.1, Clarence Natural Areas Strategy, 2024-2034 for adoption. I'll call for a mover of the recommendation, please. Thank you, Councillor James. Seconded, Councillor Warren. Thank you. Councillor James.
Yes, look, a great deal of work has been put into this, and it's, I would suggest, not light reading at night or during the day, but it has really got a lot of information. It's the strategy from 2024 to 2034. So we are reaching out. We are going at great lengths to be able to address this particular matter. And so I'd like to thank the staff for their efforts, and also the amount of effort and work that's gone into this, and seek council support.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Warren?
Yes, thank you. I also commend the officers on the amount of work that's gone into this, and I'm quite optimistic about the future of Clarence's natural areas. I'm glad that we can review this in an environment free of threats to our natural areas just behind the council chamber, so that one of the strategic goals of this is to conserve our natural areas, and we can now do that and adopt this with a clear conscience. So I do commend it to my colleagues.
Subtle as always. Anyone else wishing to make a contribution? Well, colleagues, I'll enter the debate as a council knowledge and mayor, and I am, like the mover and the seconder, extraordinarily proud of this contemporary evidence-based strategy, as it provides tangible actions for the preservation of our natural areas. This strategy sets out goals for how both council and our community can conserve all natural areas in over a 10-year time frame. The strategy was developed with input from internal stakeholders, industry experts, a councillor workshop and the Sustainability Advisory Committee. With community consultation, the draft strategy undertaken in August and September of this year. I recognise the significant work that has gone into this document, and I would like to thank all those involved in the development of Council's natural area strategy. As we know, Council's natural areas here in Clarence are biodiverse, resilient and highly valued by the community, and I am proud to say this strategy will be a lasting legacy for future generations. Councillor James, your right of reply.
Seek council support.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, colleagues. Moving now on to 8.3, financial management. There is nothing there. 8.4, governance. The quarterly report to 30 September 2024 has been circulated. The recommendation is that the report be received. I'll call for a mover, please. Thank you, Councillor Hunter. A seconder, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Hunter.
As per the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor James.
A quick question, Mr Mayor. On page 11, under the Kangaroo Bay Boulevard, it does say at a special council meeting on the 8th of November 2021, the council approved a development application for the Kangaroo Bay Boulevard site. The process for selling the land is ongoing. My recollection is that there's going to be a revised or a new DA to be submitted, or have I missed something here in the process?
Thank you.
Seek some clarification.
Thank you, Councillor James.
Thank you. I'll defer to Mr Maher on the status of the DAs.
Thank you, Councillor James, for the question. Yes, there is a revised application that has been lodged for the Hunter development in Kangaroo Bay. That is yet to receive, and we workshopped it several workshops ago, if you remember. That's yet to be finalised through Council's consent to lodge the application. There's some engineering matters being worked through with the applicants, and when that's resolved, then hopefully we'll be able to advertise that.
Thank you. So just to clarify, if I may, the process for selling the land is ongoing. That's correct. Thank you very much. Councillor James, any other questions?
Well, that was the question.
Thank you, Councillor James. Any other questions, Councillor? Any otillor questions from colleagues? Councillor Walker, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Page 54 is an environmentally responsible city. Should the investigation of a hard waste project be listed as one of the things in this area?
CEO or 54? Environmentally safe.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. The actions that are listed in there are from the strategic plan. The strategic plan predated the cessation of the hard waste collection. So if there was a decision by council to reintroduce or in some other way deal with hard waste in the future, we are reviewing the strategic plan, so one would expect that to be picked up in the revised plan if it's council's wish to do so.
Page 25, deliver fitness in the park. I quote, currently moving to summer sessions with contract for this program being renewed for procurement at the end of 2024. Can I be provided with what length that contract procurement is to go over? Because I would like clarification about whether that extends into the new financial year, which is normally a budgetary matter for consideration of council.
Thank you. Who's in the best position? Thank you, Ms Coburn.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, I will have to take that on notice. Just to clarify, we will be going to new tender in January, but I'll need to clarify the length of the contract for that project. I'll come back to you on that.
So in the absence of that answer, the contract's given and it's for, say, a calendar year, and council at a budgetary process decides not to continue, well then that rolls on for that time.
Yes, we would need to look at the future budget as part of that process. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Page 51, development, implement an urban tree strategy for Clarence is now on hold. Can I be furnished with some of the reasons that have put that onto hold and some of the things that are influencing that?
Which one was it? Sorry, Councillor.
I think page 51 says develop and implement a urban tree strategy for Clarence, and the activity is on hold for it.
Thank you. Who's the best person for that? Mr. Graham, thank you.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll take that one on notice and get informed my staff to inform Council through a briefing on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Councillor Walker.
Yes, look, it's great to be furnished with the understanding that, you know, and I asked that question around the waste, but which is, you know, elucidated the fact that this is based on strategic plans, and that's what it reports to. Page 53 is in relation to developing. I'll just find it exactly. I had it written that, yes, at the bottom of page 53, develop environmental, social and governance guidelines. My understanding was this was not part of the strategic plan, whilst it has been flagged for something to perhaps be included in an updated plan, that it currently does not sit in the strategic plan. So the bottom of the page.
Sorry, the strategic plan item is undertaking the development of an environmental sustainability strategy, and then the actions below that are the actions that have fallen out of that from an officer's point of view and also in consultation with relevant committees.
So, sorry, my understanding is that all that council, all the imprimatur that this chamber has given is specifically to a project in relation to waste and ESG, and not into ESG principles going wider and broader.
I'd have to take that on notice, Councillor Walker, because my understanding is that it has been worked through at the committee level.
Which then needs to flow through to the council level, does it?
And what I need to check on is whether that's flowed through in terms of the budget that's been approved by council.
Which was specifically 20 to 30,000 for a waste-related project, as far as my recollection of the Sustainability Committee, which is the relevant committee.
Well, maybe you have some more understanding than I do, because you sit on that committee and I don't.
I'm a recent appointee to that committee.
Okay, what we'll do, Councillor Walker, is we'll this week come back with a memo in the weekly briefing report to answer that specific question for you.
I would like that, because ESG is deeply troubling. It is an area rife with strife, rife with grift, rife with a lot of problematic issues.
Any more questions, Councillor?
Absolutely. Page 34, undertake a needs analysis and business case for a Clarence City Council Chambers site. Stroke officers are in the early stages of developing the scope of the works for the request tender. This is now, I guess, it's public now in the quarterly report. It's a public thing, and I guess I feel that I can now speak more freely than I feel I've been able to speak on this matter previously, when certain elements have been in closed council. So just to be specific, this is relating to this building and this building alone?
Correct.
Yeah. Now I guess I'm stepping away from the question side, and I'm just getting into my my speeding component of it. I raise concerns about that because.
Councillor Walker, just questions, please.
That's fine. Was it not the case that some councillors, wanted other alternative options explored?
Ms. CEO.
Yes, thank you. I can certainly provide advice on that. The advice that we had out of the workshop was that and the council meeting was that councillors wanted more information. One of those avenues of investigation was alternative sites, but there was also a very clear focus on the feasibility of this site and this building. In terms of its possible expansion, inclusion of a civic facility and so forth. That work is ongoing at present.
I might cut my losses at that point.
Any other colleagues wishing to ask a question on the quarterly report? There being none, Councillor Hunter, do you wish to have a right of reply? don't have to, it's not a blueprint.
Just thinking how to respond to Councillor Walker's questions that he raised, which are fair enough. From my memory from the Sustainable Advisory Committee, the tree strategy has been put on hold because of staff resourcing issues and other things that are on the plate with many projects at the moment. The ESG framework is in the current budget as recommended by the committee and approved by council, and you're correct, it's for a consultancy report, and that's as far as it goes. Waste, I believe we received a memo last week about that there's an investigation underway with the various councils.
Thank you, Councillor Hunter. And I'll put the motion, which is to accept the quarterly report to 30 September 2024, that be received. All those in favour? Against? Councillor Walker abstains. Thank you. Moving now, colleagues, through to 8.4.2, City Heart Plan Community Re-engagement. A call for a move of the recommendation to Councillor Goyne. Thank you. Second, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Councillor Goyne.
I'm so excited to see this re-engagement. Obviously, we're aware that the City Heart lives in the heart of many Clarence residents, all Clarence residents really. I have a great desire to see this progress and see that the community engage in the same manner in which they did when they were believing that this place was at risk. So I hope that we receive the engagement that we have in the past, because this is a valuable space and I would like to see it be used to the utmost of its capacity and in its most natural of forms, and that we are able to enjoy all of the things that this can offer. And the council have already done a lot of work in this place, and let's hope the great work continues and we see the City Heart come to life in my lifetime.
Thank you, Councillor Goyne. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I shall be brief. Pretty straightforward. This is essentially a motion about the resumption of a process following the very delayed decision from the state government in relation to the HPC. So I look forward to seeing what comes back from the community in relation to the resumed process. And I thank in advance council staff for the work that I know they're going to now undertake moving forward, and I look forward to the feedback from the community.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor James, thank you.
Thank you, and I support the motion, and I think it's back on track, and that's a great thing. We did have a temporary delay in this, and that's now been resolved, and I think the actual wording of part 1 of the motion, which basically says that the High Performance Centre is no longer a matter for really decision. It's already been made by the government, and I think that was the correct decision that they made, and I made that comment recently on ABC. What I do like on page 21 is, if you look at the proposed parts of the Rosny Parklands, we do have a change in the Arts and Play Park, and that's been relocated, to my understanding, up into the corner of the parklands. And 4, identification number 4, is called a wild park, and that I think is because of that terrain is more conducive to the little creatures and so on that have basically taken up residence there since the golf course was folded or closed. So we have an area for the wild animals, it would be, or wild park and so on. And if we jump across Rosny Hill Road, we're going into Charles Hand Park, and that's of course an active park. It's there in its entirety. and presumably those trees will form a natural. And I think the dogs off lead is still that availability for people to use, although it's has a tendency for animals, I believe, to probably run a bit too close to that Rosny Hill Road without any fencing, but nevertheless, so far it's been great. So look, let's move forward. Let's restart the engine and see what comes out of it. I have a personal view that I'd like to see that become one of the greatest Rosny parklands in a sense, with its cultural precinct, be part of this wonderful city, and we can keep it and have it available for everybody to use and enjoy. I support the recommendation.
Councillor John, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will be brief. And look, this is such an exciting time, taking the whole of the city heart from through to Bellerive all the way through Warrane and all the bits in the middle. So we've got everything. We've got suburbia, we've got business centre, we've got parklands, everything in this, and it's going to be fascinating to see what comes out of this re-engagement. And I commend the staff for the work that they've done and will continue to do on it.
Thank you. Any other colleagues wishing to make? Councillor Mulder, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't support this, and I've never supported the City Heart plan and the City Heart proposal. And I have not been alone in that, although I notice there are some recent converts. The idea of a City Heart plan, Clarence is a string of villages, interconnected villages, and the City Heart stuff is basically borrowed from the capital city Hobart, which does have a large commercial and social heart. I think it's a good precinct plan, if you wanted to name it that, but it's not just the title of it. I think it's too narrow. There's a major entertainment venue which will have huge potential uses in the terms of Bellerive Oval, which is an attractant to people into the so-called heart of Clarence, yet it's not in the plan. There's still a huge cloud over what was going to be the site of the Broads Development and Hospitality School. So here, right in the middle of it, we've got a great unknown. It doesn't mean we can't start planning around it and we can't have a long-term strategic view, but I just think the ground can be settled a little bit more. And there are some other buildings which I thank Councillor Warren for bringing to our notice, which may very well come into play in the civic sense. Now, the Rosny Parks people, we've heard them tonight, are rightly proud of the work that they did in blocking the AFL High Performance Centre, and there was continual references there. Go back to the City Heart Plan. Go back to the City Heart Plan. We were happy with that City Heart Plan. Implement that. Don't go building high performance centres. Do they realise that the City Heart Plan contains, is going to include at least 3 lots of multi-storey social housing on the precious Charles Hand Park, with a footprint much bigger than any AFL high performance centre, I would suggest? Are they aware that the provision of the Arts and Cultural Centre will require a new access road off Rosny Hill Road and will require an egress road that does not go through the private property, that is, Eastlands? So we're going to have to build a new road somewhere through those, 2 new roads through those parklands somewhere, because that's what the nature of that development is. And are they aware of the plans to stick a city hall right in the middle of the bit of parkland that is regularly used by lots of people when they're sitting out there dining in that parkland space between the things? So this is going out for consultation, and I'm looking forward to some of the people supporting this City Heart Plan now that they know what it actually contains. But I won't be voting for it because I think it gives the wrong idea that somehow or other we're going to create a night economy in what is, all said and done, commuter suburb, which ought to be focusing on the on the service economy rather than manufacturing and high-end retail. So that's the reasons that I won't be supporting this plan, but I can see the writing on the wall. I'm not going to die in a ditch over going to the next round of consultations, but when the facts are known, I just wonder how much support there'll be.
Any other colleagues wishing to enter the debate? Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Well, I note that this isn't the pull the ripcord and away and implement everything that's in the document motion. This is going back out, and I'm excited that we're dusting this off and going back out, because I think it's going to get a whole lot more eyeballs on it, and eyeballs that are perhaps going to be spending more time on it. And for those playing at home, read the lot, but you may want to pay particular attention from around the open space network section, which starts at page 40. Personally, I think that some of the aspirations in this somewhat clutter the Ruskin Parklands. That's my 10 cents worth, but other people may think that more clutter is appropriate, or they may actually have other insights and perspectives to add on the matter, which I look forward to. As far as things go, this is our CBD, and it's good to have some focus on it. I mean, and I would be hoping that people give consideration to the role the CBD can play as far as accommodating residential demand. Whether it's 700 and something or 500 and something, we are getting new people each and every year. And if we're not proactive on looking at housing choices and options, then things will just happen, I guess, by osmosis or by default. And that'll mean more opportunistic infill rather than strategic infill. And that'll be happening in older established suburbs, not in a CBD that has a bus interchange that's a short walk to a ferry terminal. So I'd like to hope that some perspectives will come around that. I do note that I think it's on page 9, there is a yellow section which is sort of noted, I think, as civic and community employment. Make your submissions, people. It doesn't all have to be a bureaucrat park. I actually think wherever possible we should be looking at combining things, and that is why I'm not a big fan of Project Chimera to redo this building. I'm more a fan of perhaps looking at something new that incorporates residential above it. I suspect that the long-term value of that would be better, but I want to hear other people's perspectives on that matter. And while you're making submissions, the reality is whatever nirvana may be for places like the Rosny Parklands, we're unlikely to be able to do it in 1 or 2 years. We might not be able to do it in 1 or 2 council terms. So I would encourage people to give some thought to how it is now, how it can be best enjoyed now, and that might come into thinking about what a good use of areas like the old golf club might be. Some people have said to me that that would be a perfect site to perhaps incorporate some sort of commercial aspect around catering, a cafe or something like that. That would offer some ambience and, if you like, some more eyes on the ground and passive surveillance. So put in your bids. We're not. This is a guide. It's not a prescription. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all the ideas, many of which will possibly counter my own. But let's take it out and see what we find.
Any other colleagues wishing to enter the debate? Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's just get it out to consultation. I can't wait to get the feedback and workshop it, and I reckon there'll be a few people that will want that golf course return, just saying.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor Hume, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to accept Councillor Walker's invitation to provide some views on Rosny Parklands. He talks about clutter, but I think it's worth noting that this is a 17-hectare site, and if we're going to, there's potential to put a lot of different facilities in there, such as what the plan provides for, and it really does need something to draw people to it, and I think that's what the plan is outlining. Of course, I'd be very interested when it goes out to consultation to hear people's view on, what they'd like to see there and what will draw them to it. But this is a long-term vision, and Councillor Walker correctly observes that it's not something that will be done overnight. In fact, it's possibly a vision that could be implemented over decades. But reflecting on Councillor Mulder's contribution, I actually do believe that you look at the growth in Clarence, and I believe that we do have the potential to develop into what is truly a city, to develop a CBD that has a lot more density, a lot more activity. But as people are drawn to that activity in those commercial services, they also have that integrated with the parklands, and that creates an experience for visitors. When they go shopping, something that people, rather than visiting for a couple of hours, where they drop into the supermarket, they may visit for a whole day, where they do some shopping. They have something to eat and spend some recreation time, in the parklands and enjoy, play parks or walking tracks or any number of amenities there. So I really want to see Clarence punching above our weight. I believe we have the potential to. I believe that we could be a place that's exciting to live, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing in our city heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hume. Well, colleagues, as I've comprehensively lost the predicted meeting end time challenge, I'll now enter the debate as a councillor, not as your mayor. As one of the fastest growing regions in Tasmania, I am sure we can all agree that Clarence must evolve to meet the changing needs and expectations of our diverse and expanding, dare I say it, exponentially, population. As our city grows, we need to ensure the infrastructure, public spaces and services on the Eastern Shore address the pain points we are experiencing now, while also preparing for tomorrow's opportunities and challenges. Rapid demographic shift generate new demand in areas such as housing, transport, healthcare services, education and environmental sustainability. Not only do we need to accommodate more people, but we must also address the needs of various groups, from young families to ageing populations. This requires informed urban planning that prioritises accessibility, affordability and inclusivity. Additionally, as climate change intensifies, we must plan for resilience, integrating green infrastructure and flood management systems to protect our community from environmental risks. These fundamental elements are at the very core of our City Heart Plan. The plan outlines a vision for the future that is built on the voices of the Clarence community and will see us mature into a sophisticated, vibrant and resilient city in which to live, work and play. While conceptual, the plan provides the blueprint to make this vision a reality with interconnected precincts that work together to create a welcoming, inclusive and sustainable city. Each precinct will contribute its unique character to make up the fabric of our city heart. The Civic, Community and Employment Precinct will be a revitalised hub for government and civic services, connecting the town centre with Rosny Parklands, fostering local employment opportunities. The Arts, Culture and Leisure Precinct will celebrate Clarence's rich history while embracing contemporary arts, music and recreation, creating a dynamic space where creativity and leisure will thrive. At the city's heart, the town centre will offer a bustling mix of retail, hospitality, health services and urban living, supported by a thriving nighttime economy. Kangaroo Bay will be transformed into a picturesque waterfront village with tree-lined promenades and recreational activities, offering beautiful views of Cunani and Hobart. Nearby, Bellary Village will provide waterfront dining, shopping and entertainment, welcoming all as a gateway to the city heart. The residential neighbourhoods of Inner and Outer Warrane will provide diverse housing options close to education, transport hubs, services and green spaces. Rosny Parklands will offer outdoor spaces that celebrate the arts, embracing Clarence's natural beauty and inviting residents to gather, connect and lead active lifestyles. Importantly, this plan has been developed with our community as we've listened and planned for our future together through focus groups, workshops, panel discussions, surveys and countless conversations. I'm delighted that the people of Clarence have shared their hopes, concerns and ideas for this wonderful place, and the result is a visionary, conceptual plan that provides a framework for our city's growth over the next 20 years and beyond. Colleagues, after more than a year of the City Heart Plan being placed on hold, we're now entering into a re-engagement stage where we invite the community to revisit their ideas, reconnect with the spaces and concepts that will shape our city's future and to share their feedback. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the many members of our community for their positive engagement, as well as our dedicated, passionate and highly professional council officers who have committed hundreds of hours to this project to date. Together we can and we must step up to create a city that is not just livable, but one that's exceptional, where everyone feels a true sense of pride and belonging. Colleagues, I'm sure we'd agree, our city deserves no less. Councillor Goyne, your right of reply, please.
Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. As you know, this is in, the hearts of all of us, and I look forward to seeing what the community comes up with now, with having more eyes on, as my colleagues expressed, and I look forward to seeing what the future entails.
Thank you, Councillor Goyne. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? So carried. Thank you. Moving now on to 8.4.3, proposed local highway standard requirements bylaw. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hunter. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be brief. This is quite a procedural motion. We have obviously workshopped this, and I'm very well aware that there are some very interesting points that we might expect to come back as a result of any consultation that's undertaken as we prepare to go through the process of creating a new local highways standard requirements bylaw. And in particular, I note matters around CEO delegation, matters around state government, regulation, all of those sorts of things that were raised in our workshop. I think they're really relevant points to think about and consider as we receive the feedback from the consultation process. So I'm looking forward to it, and also to see how those things that have been raised by colleagues actually also make their way into our deliberations moving forward, because I think they're very worthy points and considerations, and so I seek colleagues' support.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Hunter.
Yes, this is quite an important bylaw for us because it covers so much of the infrastructure that we're responsible for developing and maintaining. I particularly think it's a great opportunity for us to do things better, and I'm pleased to see the changes, particularly around the social component and the environmental components, having more space for wider footpaths, cycling infrastructure to encourage those different modes of transport. I do have one question though, and that is whether this bylaw has taken into consideration the recently released Tasmanian cycling infrastructure design guidelines.
CEO or Mr Graham?
Through Mr Mayor, I'll have to take that one on notice and advise Council through a briefing.
Mr Graham.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing what the community comes back with.
Thank you, Councillor Hunter. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor Mulder, thank you.
Mr Mayor, of course, yes, we all need a bylaw like this. It provides a little bit of structure and it provides a little bit of policy. As raised at the workshops, I have a particular concern. I had the honour of addressing the Legislative Council as they were debating their the DAP process and the direct assessment panels. And one of the things that came out of that was the fact that, not the assessing, but was the local government's representation, our representation, was that a DAP process if a large developer like that with Skylands was to take it out of council's hands and into a future DAP process, because I'm pretty sure we're going to see it again, even though the other ones failed spectacularly, but all our roads and policies of the local council are irrelevant. So this is one of the problems with the DAP. You know, we come up with how we would like our city to be with these roads, and bingo, the developer doesn't like it, so he goes to the new DAP, and we're cut out of it. That's what we are being accused of NIMBYs, anti-development, naysayers, and that's the result. When we do come up with a strategic policy, the other thing. Whilst I was there, the Stony Rise development was being debated, and the Legislative Council at every turn, wherever the minister wanted himself to have a power to do something with that development, the Legislative Council went through step by step, and every reference to the minister was changed to the planning authority. Yet here we have, and I'm sure this is no intent, but buried in this particular document are all these standards. And at point 9, at clause 9, it says the Chief Executive Officer, at their discretion, may dispense with compliance with any requirement of this bylaw. If we've got that level of discretion, why have the bylaw at all? And the same goes on. My major point is, and you've heard me probably bang on often enough about our sub-arterials and our collector roads, how those roads are the main thoroughfares, how they should not have private entrances on them because, you know, that obstructs the traffic. You know, we've seen enough of Clarence Street and Cambridge Road, and we've seen the other view, which is Pass Road and streets like that. And when I spoke to Mr Greg Carr the other day, I was just asking him about your arterial road network, and he says, oh no, there'll be minimal accesses to the Drewfy Point Road because we're going to have laneways around the back or something. So there is a case where you have this huge development which clearly meets every benchmark of a future DAP, and here we are trying to say, we don't want you to have private accesses, we don't want you to have on-street parking on these major sub-arterial roads. And here's a developer who openly says, yes, well, we're going to have some, but not all. And yet here we have it, we're coming up with a bylaw that says, no, you can't do that. And it ought to be at the discretion of the council, the planning authority, when we come to whether the standards are to be varied in a particular case. Not, and there's no reflection on the CEO, I'm sure he has no malice or ill will, but that's the question of openness and transparency about, you've gone out and made big public statements about standards, but then behind closed doors you vary them. And I think like the Stony Rise development, I think it would be remiss for us not to pick up on the fact that this level of discretion needs to be a publicly debated thing, not something you quietly go on the backgrounds. So apart from that, I think it's really good to have some standards. I raised the question about why we don't have a statewide standard for roads and streets, but then the answer is, well, not every city or municipality feels a need to have footpaths on both sides of the street. We need the capacity to, to vary that according to particular developments and needs. So I welcome this, and I think it's a great start. But I would really suggest we probably want to do some refinements, because I don't want to be standing in there briefing the LegCo again.
Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? There being none, right to reply, Councillor Ritchie.
No, I thank colleagues for their contributions and support. I suspect Councillor Mulder would more than likely be briefing the sub-leg committee at some point if his concern continued, but I'm sure they won't, and I look forward to the contributions in due course.
Well, thank you. I'll put the motion that is the recommendation. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, colleagues. Moving now on to Item number 5, motions on notice. The first one, 9.1, Councillor Ritchie, review of public places bylaw. Is there a seconder for Councillor Ritchie's motion? Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I apologise to those people who have had an interest in this topic that this debate has been delayed given my absence at the last meeting, and I know there are many people who are keenly interested in the subject matter. As it clearly articulates in the points of the motion, this is really about going away and or authorising the staff to go away and come back with some additional material for us to consider in relation to what I do. My personal view is that I think there are gaps in our current bylaws in respect of the way that we manage some issues in relation to particularly caravans in the community on public streets and private land. I'm not wedded to where the outcomes might be. I think this will be a really useful exercise to ask officers to go away, look at what other councils are doing, and that's why I did attach some of the other relevant bylaws that are in existence and in operation at other councils. I think it's a really healthy exercise for us to go through, have a look at it, assess the state government's role in it, if anything, in relation to this, taking on points that we've raised about other topics, and to come back and to see where it lands at a council workshop, and then from that point see where that might feed into the natural review cycle that's already articulated there. So that's really the genesis and the background for the motion. Came out of many constituent contacts around this issue where I found that I was impotent and that council was impotent to be able to respond to the concerns. So, really excited. I hope colleagues will support it for what it is and what it intends to do, and to see what the staff come back with for future discussion.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Mr Chairman. It's interesting, when this was first raised at the workshop, I had some reservations, and that was in relation to parking of caravans and boats on private land. And it came to my mind that when we were discussing that really what you should be able to do on your own land, within reason, within respect to what the actual policy is of being custodian of your land. That's really what it boils down to. We never really own the land as such, but we believe we do, and therefore we can sell it, but that's another matter. So having this inclusive of parking caravans and boats on public, as well as the occupancy of caravans on private land, as to whether it can be regulated or whether it should be regulated by a bylaw, is another matter. But what the nature of this motion is, and I support it obviously because I second it, that it's due for renewal in 2028. There's a lot of things to do, a lot of time to be spent, and I know that the CEO and his team have a little bit of extra time, I think, to actually go ahead and start working on this. So in order for the review would be ordinarily commence in 26, 27, okay? It's going to look at these issues, and I believe it's appropriate that we have the feedback in accordance with the recommendation C. That's from the officer's point of view, and council considers whether to bring forward the review to address these matters on the basis of what feedback and what the officers provide to us at the appropriate time. I seek council support.
Councillor Chong, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Speaking to some friends who live in the Huon where there are some of these regulations, they think that actually they're very difficult to enforce, or they appear to be very difficult to enforce, let me put it that way, is the residents' feelings. So I guess for me, I would be really interested to see, as well as whether these are possible, how we might think we could possibly enforce them if we do put the bylaws in, because pointless if we can't enforce them afterwards.
Thank you, Councillor Chong. Any other colleagues wishing to? Councillor Walker, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And this may be answered, I guess, by you, the CEO, or indeed maybe it might be a matter that will be addressed when the mover of the motion provides her right of reply. Just in relation to point B, which is the subject of feedback provided to councillors in accordance with recommendation C above, council considers whether to bring forward the review of the public places bylaw to address these issues within the context of the advice. That would normally be done, I expect, through a notice of motion, or would there be another process in which bringing forward the bylaw review would occur?
Thank you, Councillor Walker. In the ordinary run of things, we would initiate that review of the bylaw according to a timeframe. Bylaw reviews are generally a 12 to 18-month job minimum. We would be in the hands of council as to, once we've looked at the viability of the changes that are discussed in this motion, if council wanted to bring the bylaw review forward, then that would be something that we would discuss at a workshop, I would imagine, and then make a decision from there. It doesn't necessarily need a notice of motion. We just need some direction. That's council's wish.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor Mulder, thank you.
Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Oh, my apologies. Wrong piece of paper. Sorry. No, please, the floor is yours, Councillor Mulder.
I do see this, but I see the depth of it, and I'm not sure whether, we bring forward the review as to what we'll be doing. We all know that workshop space and time is limited. These sorts of things, there are just so many issues involved in it that I think once around the table on a draft and then a for or against it would just, this requires an awful lot of work, and there's a lot of ideas, and I think maybe what we should do is perhaps an offline idea for suggestions and ideas along the lines of all the work that's been put in might be a better way to kick off what council as a whole wants to see or not want to see in those things. My concern is that although some councils regulate whether we can live in a caravan or not, it's just so awkward. I mean, we've got entire villages like the one at Richmond, which is basically caravans in a caravan park which are permanently occupied. So, and there's an ablution block next door, and I mean, I can see that you might require a permit if you're going to connect it to services because of the, the planning and Taswater and all those sorts of things. But I mean, like in this day of homelessness, I think people would be just love it if they could have a caravan on private land. So there are some enforcement issues. There are some difficulties with it. We can all make these laws, but as we've, as someone who's spent most of their professional life trying to enforce some of the ridiculous laws that we're handed with, they can't be enforced. They won't be enforced. And at which point, why have them? So it's a really fraught area. In terms of parking on public streets, which is where I get most of the issues and the complaints about, is very wide vehicles or high vehicles which are parked in spots which are of such a size on a public street, they're obstructing views and all those sorts of things. Well, maybe we need, like we do with trucks, maybe we need to start thinking about targeting that particular area, but I suspect that would mean some impact on the Australian road rules rather than a one-off council bylaw, so that it becomes a consistent thing throughout the state and not a subject of, of a council decision. But no, I've got a few points, but it's a very, very broad topic to be conducting a review on, and I wish the staff well in trying to piece together something about what councils will or wouldn't want in such a bylaw. And I suppose the point is, what bits do we want taken out of the current bylaw and what bits do we want to add to the current bylaw, which is what a review is all about. So all of us have some homework in, I mean, I must say I'm not totally au fait with what the bylaw says today.
Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? There being none, Councillor Ritchie, right of reply, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, and I thank colleagues for their contributions and their very valid and well-made points. It's quite right that one would expect, as part of the review moving forward, that matters around enforcement would feature as part of any reporting that comes back from the council officers. I appreciate the issue raised around timing and the clarity that was provided by the CEO in respect of the timing of any future bylaw review and any initiation of that. And of course I understand Councillor Mulder's issues. Of course there will be many and varied, and this is the reason for the exercise, is that we need to take a broader look. We need to examine what's possible and what we may want to do, because they are very distinct and separate things. So that's the reason when I inquired about these matters with staff, I was directed to this particular bylaw, and we had numbers of discussions around what other councils were doing. So it seemed and still does seem more than appropriate to try and start to foster these discussions. I'm very comfortable about how those discussions happen, either offline or through workshops or whatever moving forward. But the comfort is that this is exploratory as I see it, and that we will all have full opportunity to work through it as the information comes back to us through whichever channels that the staff might elect to use. And I'm grateful to the staff for the work that they've done with me to date, and I am also looking forward to what they may do for us moving forward, and I seek council support.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. I'll put the motion, seeing in the name of Councillor Ritchie. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, colleagues. Moving on to item 9.3, which is a notice of motion, seeing in the name of Councillor James. I understand Councillor James, let's wait for it to come up on the screen, that Part B, there's been a word change there that would read differential rating for short stay accommodation be considered in Council's 25-26 budget process. Is that
that's
so? That's the motion you'll be moving. Call for a seconder. I'll call for a seconder. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor James.
Look, thank you, Mr Mayor, and that's correct. The word has been changed to considered in Part B. Look, the Short Stay Accommodation Act of 2019 is valid, and the Hobart City Council is using, or has adopted, but not entirely what we're proposing here, but nevertheless they have adopted a rating charge for those properties that are obviously used wholly in the property to operate as short stay accommodation. That requires the entire premises must be permanently available for visitor letting. However, a planning permit is not required if only a room within a dwelling where the owner or occupier also resides, or if the property is let out on a temporary basis while the owner or occupier is on vacation or temporarily absent. So, in my mind, I've had this difficulty over time where premises have been used and the entire property has been rented out, basically on a permanent basis as part of the short-term short stay accommodation, and now the Office of the Valuer General has reclassified and adopted this new R7 code, which basically means the property must have a planning permit from council to operate the whole of the property as a short stay accommodation, and the entire premises must be permanently available for visitor letting. So the differential rating that Hobart's adopted, okay, I think we need to go down our own course in relation to this, and I'm seeking council to look ahead, or in the nature of the 25-26 budget, along with other changes that we may consider at that time, for us to at least look at this, investigate and see whether or not we can introduce a new rate for what I think we know as being commercial properties, as distinct for those properties that are only rented for a short time, or in fact where the owner lives there and there's only a room or only a short-term use of the place while the owner is away or otherwise temporarily absent. I seek council support.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Ritchie, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I thank Councillor James for bringing forward what is an element of some of the matters that we've already discussed in this place many times in relation to short stay accommodation, and I think it is appropriate that we put a time frame on whether we introduce or not a potential separate rating requirement for those who are operating entire premises effectively as a business for short stay accommodation. As colleagues know, I've got a great deal of interest in other issues around short stay accommodation that relate to things like, thresholds and character of communities and those sorts of things, which are quite difficult to quantify, and I look forward to continuing to see what comes out of those discussions, because it is a difficult thing to say, the saturation point in a community. At what point does it change a community? Is there a 20% short stay accommodation threshold? All of those sorts of things. So it has been a very difficult issue for us all over a period of time to grapple with. It would have been great to see more leadership on this issue shown by the state government, but there it is. So I thank Councillor James for effectively putting a time frame on this element and this consideration, and I'll look forward to, once again, what the council officers come back with for colleagues to digest and consider at the appropriate time, and I seek council support.
Thank you, Councillor Richard. Councillor Chong, please.
And thank you, Councillor James, for bringing this motion. Look, I'm not going to support it at this point, and it isn't that I don't think we should look at this. I don't think there's enough information in here, or is broad enough in how we investigate to make a decision. Because just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something. And this gives us potentially information to do it, but it doesn't look at what are the costs of doing that. Hobart City Council has found that it's costing them a lot of money to actually try and enforce this. You say send a rating thing and somebody says, yeah, but actually it's not let out at the moment. So you come off the R7 rating. I can't see why we wouldn't end up with the same issue here. So I feel I need more information, not just about what this means, but how we would deal with it and all of those things before I would consider saying that we should be looking at this rate. And I note we've already got some discussion that we know about in the budget. So the staff are already doing some information for us in the budget. I would be much happy to look at it there and then consider this, and then consider it at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Chong. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor Walker, thank you.
Thank you. Another question. If this motion is defeated, given the motion that was previously successful in this space, am I right to understand that this doesn't bind council to not introducing such a levy, if you like?
So, yeah.
Yes, that would be right, Councillor Walker.
Thank you for that.
Council's ultimately got a decision through its budget and rating decisions.
And furthermore to that, whilst that'll ultimately be part of that process, from an earlier motion that was moved by Councillor Ritchie, that maybe not as firmly, but was actually leading towards a situation where there's more information around the mechanics of how such a process might be implemented.
That's correct.
Right.
Thank you. Councillor Mulder, thank you.
My question was really, it's more of a question than anything else. I fully support the idea of the differential rate within the housing, within the general residential zones, particularly as they relate to properties that are principally commercial properties. Now, it's quite clear that the original intent of Airbnb was that, you know, as empty nesters, we've certainly got a few spaces, which if I could persuade my wife to monetise, we would have done years ago, but sorry, there are higher authorities than myself, apparently. But the question I sort of pose is that how does our rating system work in the mixed-use zones where there's, you know, parts of a building for this and parts of a building, a strata title building for that and things like that? So do we already have a differential ratings within the same zone?
Mrs. Mayoral.
We do currently have differential rating between capital, residential, industrial, so we go down to that level, and then within sporting we go down to the next level. So if we were to introduce this rating, it would be at that secondary level.
Yes, so it is possible to set a differential rate, and that rate I suspect could be assigned to the fact that although the property may be let at the moment, and we're talking about whole houses here, the fact is that it might not be let today, but you know, it's set up for the purpose and it's got council approval to be used as a business. And if you choose not to operate the business 24/7, surely that's a private issue and not one to be dabbling around with saying, oh, well, I've got this permitted use, but I'm only doing it sometimes and therefore I pay the rate sometimes. It's a decision you make. You want to monetise your property, you want to make a few quid out of it, well, sorry, guys. Death is the only alternative to taxes, but both are going to happen.
Any other colleagues wishing to enter the debate? Thank you, Councillor Darko.
Yeah, mostly to ask a question. Given in Part A it says investigates and considers, and there's the change to Part B for considered instead of incorporates, and with what's in the CEO's comments around the focus of the workshop already covering this, does this actually change anything?
CEO.
Thank you for the question. At one level, no, but at another level, yes, in the sense that there's a little bit more focus. It gives officers a little bit more focus, but effectively we're doing a piece of work. We will bring that through to council in the budget workshops. The more information we have from councillors about options and issues and considerations, the better.
Any other colleagues? Councillor Hume, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say in response to the contribution that Councillor Chong made that I have confidence that you know, the sort of issues that she's outlining would be investigated as part of this process. I'm sure the CEO would use his discretion to do that. And I think it's also worth noting that I would be interested to see a bit more information about what that experience was with Hobart, because from a planning point of view, we're looking at the question of uses all the time and investigating, you know, what uses people on properties claim they're undertaking and what uses they're actually undertaking. And, you know, I suppose if we can do it in a planning sense, we can do it in a rating sense. I mean, well, in a way we do it in a rating sense, but it's, I guess it's a question of degrees.
Thank you, Councillor Hume. Any other colleagues wishing to enter the debate? There being none, Councillor James, right of reply, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be brief. It's another level that we can look at. Okay, the officers are still doing work on this, and that's great. But this is basically put it out into the community in a sense that we are investigating and we're looking at, obviously, looking at a rating for those short stay accommodations that are being permanently occupied, and therefore there is that element that I think we need to tap into that, and therefore they ought to be paying their fair share of the services which they otherwise have as a commercial undertaking. I seek council support.
Thank you, Councillor James. I'll put the motion saying in the name of Councillor James. All those in favour? Those against? So carried. Thank you, colleagues. Moving now on to item 10, councillor question time. 10.1, questions on notice. There's 2 questions standing in the name of councillor Hume. CEO, are you able to provide a response, please, to councillor Hume's questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just find the 2 questions. Where are those?
Here they are, here. Sorry.
Thank you. So, just for the record, councillor Hume has asked 2 questions in relation to the High Performance Centre site assessments. First question is council aware of any plans by the Tasmanian Government to publicly release the site assessments and associated advice on which their recent decision about the location of High Performance Centre was based? And secondly, if so, when is this information expected to be released? I can advise council that the day following the government's announcement that the High Performance Centre would be located in Kingston, I contacted the Department of State Growth and asked for copies of those reports, and specifically the geotechnical reports and any environmental assessments that were conducted in the parklands. I followed that advice. The advice that I then received was that those reports could be provided to council. I then followed that up and asked whether that advice could be released publicly. The advice I got back today from the Department of State Growth is that at this stage there has been no decision to release this information more broadly. However, it is under consideration and we can keep you informed in this regard. In the meantime, any information released in response to council requests will be solely for the internal use of council to inform the planning, development and progression of the City Heart project. So at this stage, I would expect to receive those reports at some time soon, but as things stand, I'm not yet at liberty to release those publicly. But certainly if I have that opportunity, I will inform councillors and then make that information public at that point.
Thank you, CEO. Moving on to 10.3, answers to questions about notice previous council meeting as listed in the agenda. 10.4, questions without notice. Are there any questions from the floor starting this evening with the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Ritchie? Thank you. Councillor Mulder.
I have 2. One relates to a previous proposal for the reforestation, I'll choose my words carefully, of a section of off Loyna Crescent alongside the Tasman Highway in relation to noise mitigation and those sorts of things. I previously was advised that it needed to be assessed by council staff and would require consideration in the budget. My question is, where is that at?
Thank you. Mr Graham, you're in a position to provide a response.
Through Mr Mayor, sorry, no, I'll have to take that one on notice, that one.
Thank you, Mr Graham. Councillor Mulder.
My second question relates to what capacity there is on streets such as Bligh Street, with my old problem about as we infill, there's more on-street parking, and it's now to the point where any day of the night it's impossible for 2 cars to pass on Bligh Street because of parking on both sides of the street on what is supposed to be a collector road. Is there any capacity in these streets under the rules or whatever else to create designated parking on nature strips? And I mean, there might be a requirement to pave them or something like that so we don't end up with mud holes throughout the city. But you know, this is a classic case of the things that we're trying to avoid with our roadwork strategy and things like that. So the question is what capacity is there to create private parking on nature strips?
Mr Graham.
Through Mr Mayor, well, I'll need to take that one on notice. It depends on the road reservation. I mean, you possibly could. Services might have to be relocated so they're not under parked cars, if that's a preference. But I'd also, Mr Mayor, might even, whether it's part of the Warrain Urban Renewal Project in terms of looking at the road networks through there, it's probably a broader picture in terms of that, in terms of how council may approach that. But City Heart does also extend into some of that areas as well, I understand. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr Graham. Councillor Hunter. Councillor Hume.
Thank you, Mayor. Back in April 2023, actually, Council made a decision based on the advice we received to disband the Clarence Band Committee and to encourage the band to become an incorporated association and then enter into a sponsorship agreement with them. I just wanted to ask, was that a initiative that was that idea initiated by the band or by council?
Thank you, Councillor Hume. CEO, please.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Hume. That was an issue discussed with the then president of the band, Judy Travers, and then progressed from there. But it was a joint initiative of council and the band leadership at that time.
Councillor Hume.
Follow up to that, I understand that the band, or from a brief response I've received to an elected member request, that band has not yet incorporated, and I understand that one of the issues they have in incorporating is that they are potentially facing an expense of some thousands of dollars in insurance for their instruments and sheet music and various assets that would have, I understand, been covered by council's insurance previously. I'm just wondering, is that something that the band has communicated with us about in terms of their sponsorship negotiations, and is that possibly a sticking point to them becoming incorporated?
The short answer is yes, they have communicated to council. Ms Weeks, would you like to expand on that? There were some memos in recent times that went to all elected members about this issue.
Through you, mate, yes, that has been communicated. Prior to this, we have had discussions around funding agreements and what would like to be budgeted, but this is ongoing, and I can provide further information in a briefing memo further to this.
Thank you, Ms Weeks. Thank you, Councillor Hume. Councillor James.
Thank you. Two questions. Firstly, there's a small triangular piece of land at the top of Rosny Hill Road, adjacent to the City View Hotel, and there's trees that are obviously blown over in the wind, and as you're driving in and going down Rosny Hill Road, this has been like a wasteland. And so my question is, I believe council was handed over Rosny Hill Road into its ownership some time ago, but I believe that parcel of land may still be in the ownership of Department of State Growth. Could that be investigated? Because it just is an absolute disgrace. You know, as you're coming into the city, you just see this wasteland of trees that are broken. There's a bit of rubbish under there as well. So my question,
the answer,
could we look into that?
Yes, we can definitely look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. The other question is in relation to the triathlon, and it was mentioned earlier this evening by Mr Chapman. It seems to be an issue that may not go away, and so my question is, we have a Bellerive Oval traffic plan that was enacted some time ago because of the activities on the Bellerive Oval at the times of major footy events. Because this triathlon is becoming such an activity for all the schools, and it's a centre point as far as Clarence is concerned, is it possible that we could enact or utilise the Bellerive Oval transport plan and what entails that at the games conducted at the Bellerive Oval in the event of having the triathlon, sort of organised along similar lines as that transport plan? A question? It may seem...
CEO, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll take that one on notice. Thanks, Councillor Jones.
All right, Councillor Walker. Thank you. Councillor Darko. Councillor Warren.
This is a follow-up to Councillor Hume's question on notice. I'm aware that there's a heavily redacted version of the report around in response to an RTI request from an MP, and I don't know which one. Has council seen that, and has council considered, or would council consider putting in an RTI request if we don't receive a copy in the near future? And I would expect it not to be heavily redacted because it is our land, and I think we're entitled to know the results of the survey. So,
CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Warren. In short, we wouldn't normally consider RTIing the state government for something like that. We have an indication that we will be provided with the report, and that was on the basis that we're obviously re-engaging with the City Heart Plan. That would be useful information potentially to help guide us, but the department has been very clear that it was specific to their purposes and our purposes might be different. So at this point in time, I'm not aware of the redacted copy, but that's probably not a lot of use to us, to be honest. So at this stage, I'm reasonably comfortable that we will get a copy.
Councillor Chong?
Question closed.
Okay, certainly. Thank you. Councillor Kennedy?
Just a quick one from me, and it's probably one that will have to be taken on notice, but I have a query from a couple of residents in Gilston Bay about when the last maintenance was carried out at Astor Park. Apparently there's some fallen trees and a bit of rubbish around. It's just looking a little unloved.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Mr Graham?
Mr Mayor, yes, I'll take that one on notice.
Right, thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Well, colleagues, we've now arrived at item number 11, closed meeting. I call for a motion to move into closed meeting, please. Moved by Councillor Chong, seconded by Councillor Warren. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. So thank you to those members of the public who attended this evening in person, those also joining us via the live stream. I'm reliably informed that tonight is our last council meeting for the year. So may I, on behalf of all my colleagues here, the CEO and his team, wish everyone a very joyful, wonderful but safe Christmas. I hope you enjoy, if you're able to, a good break and some time with loved ones. We'll be back here for our first council meeting for 2025 on the 13th of January. Look forward to seeing you then. Please end the live feed.